All right, I want to thank everyone for going and downloading, listening, streaming, however you go and find this particular podcast. My name is Greg Dennis. I am the president of Shadowfire Promotions, your Chicago source for wrestling. This is our fourth podcast, our fourth one. So, hey, we survived the big three. We're now into four. Our next step is double digits. Anyway, so we got a lot of stuff to talk about here. We're going to talk a little bit about comics, some wrestling, some mixed martial arts, some interwebs, some internet stuff that is kind of in the news of late. A lot of different things going on here. So I want to start off first with a little bit about Jimmy Del Rey. Jim Del Rey of the tag team The Heavenly Bodies has been reported having passed away as of the 6th. Most people don't really know Jim Del Rey. He didn't have a very noteworthy career in terms of long runs in the World Wrestling Federation or World Championship Wrestling or anything like that. His most famous time was as a member of the Heavenly Bodies with Dr. Tom Pritchard in Jim Cornette's Smoky Mountain Wrestling. This is in the early part of the 90s. Jimmy Del Rey was in the World Wrestling Federation during the short-lived alliance between Smoky Mountain and the World Wrestling Federation just before Smoky Mountain folded and was absorbed into the World Wrestling Federation. They had some world title matches. They were Smoky Mountain Tag Team Champions, and they had some victories in the World Wrestling Federations, but they did not go and hold on to the WWF Tag Team Championship for very long. Unfortunately, they have held some independent championships, or Jimmy Del Rey's had some independent tag team championships with Dr. Tom Pritchard in the USWA, Jerry Jarrett, Jerry Lawler's Federation in Memphis, Smoky Mountain. They've held some stuff and some independence, championship wrestling from Florida, but they never quite got to the big time. They did face the Steiner brothers at one point when Rick and Scott were still teaming together, but they never quite got to the big time with the World Wrestling Federation Tag Team Championship. They were acknowledged. This time is a particularly noteworthy for the World Wrestling Federation for the first time acknowledging that there was actually another wrestling company aside from them. They did it again, probably more noteworthy with Extreme Championship Wrestling, ECW, and a couple more years past that, but to acknowledge there was another wrestling company aside from them was a really, really big step for the WWF at that time, because they've most of the time kind of had a philosophy that anything that you did before you came to the company didn't matter. Anything you do afterwards didn't matter. They kind of lived in a gigantic bubble, which they still do to an extent, and that's kind of part of the reason that hurts them in terms of content on the WWE network, but I'll get to that a little later on. They did spend some time, the Heavenly Bodies spent a little bit of time in Extreme Championship Wrestling in the mid to late 90s, but again, they didn't quite make a really big mark in Extreme Championship Wrestling as some other people who would later be major players in the company. You know, Raven, Sandman, Dreamer, Tommy Dreamer, Stevie Richards, some of these other guys. They were kind of more of a secondary player. But Jimmy Del Rey was found dead on the 6th, which was Saturday, at age 52 of an apparent heart attack. There is some things floating around that it might not have been a heart attack or it might have been something else, but for now we're going off the assumption that it's a heart attack. And quite frankly, how he passed is not really relevant. The fact of the matter is that Jimmy Del Rey has indeed passed. He was age 52. just turned 52 not terribly long ago. He was largely retired from the wrestling business at the time he passed. It's unclear really how, like if there was anything that precipitated a heart attack, if there was some sort of family history or anything that might have caused it. But maybe as we get a little further out, past his death, there'll be some things that become a little more clear with regard to that. So the big news right now is CM Punk. CM Punk has managed to find himself back in the news after leaving WWE. He engaged in a podcast not long ago with his old friend Colt Cabana. If you haven't heard it now, you might want to check it out. It's interesting. It's uncensored Punk, which, if you've ever seen anything with Punk, the Punk is mostly uncensored, so it's not necessarily a big surprise that CM Punk is uncensored. But he's got his own set of opinions regarding Vince McMahon and his time in WWE and what precipitated his leaving the company. And kind of his reflection on his time in pro wrestling. At this time, he's pretty much stating that it's not going to happen in terms of him coming back. Punk was pretty outspoken about not liking guys who were part-time, come back for a big payday and jump over the heads of other guys. Specifically mentioning his time with Rock and Batista and his perception that these guys come in after leaving the company and leapfrog over the guys that are currently there putting their bodies on the line, and then they get huge pushes because of the mainstream attention when they want to plug a movie or plug some other side project of theirs, and Punk kind of felt that it wasn't really fair for these guys to be put in that position. He made sure to kind of cover his base and say it's not necessarily something he blames guys like Rock or Batista or anyone for. He understands that it's strictly a business thing that they want to come and plug their thing. It's not, I think Punk kind of expressed that that it was more of he was upset that Vince McMahon puts him in a position where he's going to go and push them over current guys, and then when they leave, here you have all these current guys that are still there and still working and still kind of busting their hump over in WWE, but don't really have, we'll either have lost these guys or we'll have put them over in some other way while they're there, but don't have any real chance to regain any sort of heat that they may have lost or any sort of momentum that they may have lost in working a program with these guys. And that makes a lot of sense. And what Punk is saying has probably been expressed in the past by others, either privately or publicly in some cases. Has Punk burned his bridge forever with WWE? Probably not. I know there was something out there saying that Vince McMahon had a reply to that sort of thing, but I don't think he's permanently burned a bridge with them. Vince McMahon has probably burned a bridge with a lot more people, and Punk probably isn't it. One of the things that Punk mentioned in his podcast is that he just wasn't having fun anymore doing what he was doing, and that's something that he had mentioned a while back. It wasn't even, I don't think it was something with Colt Cabana where he said he's just not having fun doing what he's doing. And I think that when he first walked out, one of the first things that was reported about him walking out, he said, "I'm not having fun anymore. I'm sore, my body hurts. I'm not being positioned in a main event. I don't know where I'm going as a character. You haven't told me how we're going to get paid from the WWE Network or if we're going to get paid from the WWE Network. and I'm unhappy with everything that's going on. There's kind of a revolving door of people coming into WWE in terms of management, and no one can really give me a straight answer. And I think Punk was in a position that a lot of people supported, but couldn't necessarily outright express that sort of sentiment from a financial perspective of wanting to walk away. I'm going to kind of touch on that a little later on, because I do want to talk a little bit about the WWE Network and some more potential reasons. I've spoken about it in some of the other editions of the podcast, some thoughts on why WWE can't seem to get money from the WWE Network, and some of the reasons why they will not make money off the WWE Network, like we'll never make money off of this thing, why they'll never get the amount of subscribers they want. And I'm going to get to that in just another minute. I'll kind of go over that in a second, because we're kind of moving towards a WWE sort of thing here, so I don't want to jump around too far and get too far ahead of myself. But, he mentioned not having fun, and I think the Punk was in a position where he had money. He had a very nice run at the top with the world title. I'm sure he made a lot of money. I'm sure that he saved a lot of his money. I don't really picture him. I met him once or twice at independent shows I've worked at, but I don't really think he's the type of guy who's going to go out and spend his money on, blow and hookers and all this type of thing. He has a lot of money. He's got a lot of name recognition. I think that, there's a lot of people that say, he should never have walked out on WWE because he'd be nothing but some random indie guy and WWE made him. And I think that shows a lack of understanding of the independent scene in wrestling and where he was from his time with Ian Rodden's federation and Ring of Honor and all these other federations that he's ever worked in his time to the top. I don't think that you have to be some person who knows every single thing about every independent federation that ever runs to know who CM Punk is. Would the casual fan know who he is? Probably not. Without WWE, that is. If it wasn't for WWE, would the casual guy that just kind of casually turns on wrestling every so often know who CM Punk is? No. But to think that the only reason that Punk is a success is because of WWE is a major fallacy. I think Punk might not have had these $1 million payoffs that he would have had if WWE had not come calling. But I think as far as people that are into pro wrestling, aside from WWE, I think he would have definitely had name recognition. And that kind of brings me to, that there's always going to be two camps of fans. There's always going to be the camp of fans that only turns on WWE and subscribes to every single thing WWE puts in front of them, says WWE is the greatest, they're the only thing that matters. And, when I've worked with independents, I've told them time and time again, a lot of federations go out there, oh my gosh, WWE is promoting at this local arena, so let's go and flyer it with paperwork for our independent show, and we'll go out there and we'll make sure we hand out flyers to every single guy there. And I keep saying, you're barking up the wrong tree, because WWE fans are WWE fans and independent wrestling fans are independent wrestling fans. Do those two circles merge every so often? Kind of look at a Venn diagram. Do those two circles merge? They do. Do they merge often? I would not say they merge often, but they do merge. It's not that they never, ever merge, but they do. But they don't merge very often, and I think if you're going to a WWE show looking to blanket the parking lot or blanket the arena with ads for your local show, I'm not necessarily sure that's the way to go. I think that the majority of those people there are going to be solely WWE fans and have kind of the infamous WWE blinders that who cared about the has-beens and nobodies that comes through indies, because, you know, we've never had anyone that's ever come up and done anything from some independent federation. I mean, who's ever come up from an independent federation and done anything? I mean, certainly not CM Punk or Hornswoggle or Daivari or, you know, anyone else. You know, Kamikaze Ken Anderson, Mr. Anderson, Mr. Kennedy, whatever the hell you want to call him. I mean, it's not like anyone's ever done anything from the independents. No one's ever done anything. That's just a bunch of nobodies. You know, is kind of the attitude a lot of people take, which is a very bad attitude to have about the independent scene, because when you look at the independent scene, when you go to an independent show, you're looking at guys who will be the next generation of WWE superstars. WWE's got this kind of notion in their head that we have the WWE Performance Center, so we can take any old idiot off the street and train him to be a pro wrestler or a sports entertainer, and we're going to train him to be a sports entertainer our way, and we don't need to look to the independent scene. We don't need to go to Ring of Honor or any other independent promotion, whether it be NXT or anything else. We can just make anyone. We can make a model. We can get some Victoria's Secret model and make her into a WWE diva. We can find some random guy on the street with an interesting look and make him be a WWE superstar by sending them through the Performance Center, which is, again, an incorrect thought. And the reason why is that the people that are going to be most passionate about pro wrestling, whether you call it pro wrestling or sports entertainment or whatever you call it, the most passionate people are going to be the ones that have been busting their hump and doing this on the independent circuit, that have been going out there doing stuff for no pay, little pay, $20 a night, $50 a night, you know, whatever. And that's been proven, again, The Shield, CM Punk, Daivari, Kennedy, all these people who have come up through there. You know, it's worth noting that the WWE Performance Center has not yet to this point brought anyone up to WWE that's managed to make something of himself in a major way. There's nothing where they said, here's this person, we've made him from scratch, kind of this Frankenstein monster. You know, we've made this sports entertainer from scratch, because they haven't yet. Could they? That's up in the air. I don't think they can on a personal level, because you're not going to find someone off the street who's going to be as passionate about the product, whatever you call that product, whether you call sports entertainment or pro wrestling or whatever, as someone who said, this is really what I want to do with myself. This is what I want to do with my life. I want to be a wrestler. I want to work in wrestling. You know, this is all I've ever wanted to do, and I'm willing to do, you know, whatever it takes to get to be a professional wrestler or sports entertainer or whatever, as opposed to saying, hey, you know, off the street, you're going to be a wrestler. I think this has been proven by all the models that WWE hires to be their divas, where they can be a diva, whatever name you want to give them. You know, you can give them a WWE name that they don't have to take with them when they're done, but they always, you know, in a few years, these divas go and they say, okay, I'll work 2 or 3 years or 5 years or whatever, and then they eventually leave and try and use that fame that they've acquired through WWE to pursue their own endeavors. And you're not going to have people who go and stay in wrestling forever, you know, for lack of a better term. You know, guys that continue to come back year after year. You know, your Hogans, when he was alive, Randy Savage, some of these other guys that you remember from 10 or 20 years ago that want nothing more to do than being a pro wrestling show. You know, the Dudleys, Paul Heyman, all these guys that say, I want to be in wrestling. I get all these opportunities to do other things, but I want to be in wrestling more than I want to do anything else. Even John Cena. I know everyone likes to go and shit on John Cena because he's not really the most technically sound worker out there. His persona is kind of hokey. It seemed kind of, white bread, and his movies stink because he's not a great actor either. But for whatever else that you want to fault John Cena for, John Cena goes out there and says, I want to wrestle. I don't want to leave to make movies after gaining fame in wrestling and come back every so often for a guest appearance. I want to be a pro wrestler. That's not knocking anyone that wants to go and make movies and come back, Batista, Rock, whatever. These guys, they've made their fame. They busted their hump for a long time to make that fame. And now that their time has come to leave and move on, they're a certain age to do it. Rock is still a fairly young guy, but he's using his fame from wrestling to make movies and make TV shows. But you'll note that he's not really leaving wrestling behind, because he still makes it a point to say, hey, I wouldn't have got to this point if I wasn't a wrestler. Steve Austin is the same. And Steve Austin, a lot of people forget, because he had such a relatively short run in WWE. He spent 20 years between Dallas and Dallas and Memphis and ECW and all these other places, long before WWE started looking at him. And he's 50. He's well past the time when he should be going and taking his bumps. He says, I'm on to another phase of life. I don't think that I'm going to be 50 and still be on the road competing every night. But he's also quick to acknowledge that it was pro wrestling, that's what he loves, and that's what he wants to be a part of. It's just that he's moving on to a different thing that's outside of the ring now. But what I'm specifically mentioning is people that come in, spend a year, maybe 2 years in there, and then leave. And WWE has kind of a revolving door now, where guys come in and just leave. It's not as prevalent with the male wrestlers as it is with the divas, but it also has to do with the difference in hiring practices with the divas, where they go and pay through a Victoria's Secret catalog and say, I like the way this chick looks in her underwear, we should hire her to be a diva. But that's clearly Vince McMahon's vision for the women, because if it wasn't Vince McMahon's vision, it wouldn't be like that. And that's pretty much, you can blame anyone you want, whether it's Jim Ross or John Laurinaitis or anyone else, but if it wasn't Vince McMahon's vision in the end, it wouldn't happen, because everything that happens in that company, and this has been said by, Steve Austin himself, the bottom line is whatever happens in that company, Vince is still, the buck stops here. So continuing on with WWE, I want to talk a little bit. There was an article recently at the beginning of this month in Rolling Stone where they talked about Steve Austin's rivalry, his feud with Vince McMahon. They talked about his retirement and his injuries, some of the names and his movie roles and everything like that. And it was mainly focusing on the WWE Network interview he had with Vince. They talked a little bit about Hulk Hogan wanting to go and get Steve Austin in the ring, and Steve Austin had kind of, I guess the word is gaffed off. He's just kind of really not mentioned the fact that Hogan's kind of called him out. He's just kind of said, whatever, I talked to Hogan, I sent these few text messages to him, whatever. But I wouldn't necessarily think that a match between Steve Austin and Hulk Hogan would sell at this point. And the reason why I think that wouldn't sell real well is because, quite frankly, at this point, I'm not sure if a match between 50-year-old Steve Austin and 60-year-old Hulk Hogan is going to do anything, since Hogan's got a bad neck, Hogan's got a bad back. I'm not sure that a match with them is going to do anything. I think it's Hulk Hogan trying to, get himself in the limelight a little bit, because Steve Austin is clearly far and away the most popular guy ever in pro wrestling, and I think it kind of stings Hulk Hogan a little bit that for everything he's done, Austin has clearly blown him away. and he wants a little bit of that. And, what's the best way to do it? Then kind of make some noise that, hey, I want a match with you. I want something to do with you. And it's not something of, I'll be on your podcast, because that's going to draw more attention to Austin. But if Hogan makes noise, yeah, Steve's a coward, I challenge him to a match and he's not responding, then it kind of puts Hogan more in the driver's seat, and I think that's where Hogan wants to be. Like I said, I'm not necessarily sure a match is going to happen with either one of them. But anyway, it was a brief little article. They kind of talk about some stuff that he's planning, some stuff he's mentioned on his podcast, his opinion of the current roster, the usual stuff. It's kind of a fluff article, what you'd kind of expect from Rolling Stone, but it was just kind of interesting that and Rolling Stone is kind of more of a pop culture magazine these days than it is a music magazine, but it's just kind of interesting that they talked about his feud with McMahon and the WWE Network version of the podcast and Hulk Hogan calling him out and all that. A little more about WWE. We briefly talked about the network, and this is a good chance to kind of transition into that when I spoke of the live version of his podcast that would air on the network. I think that WWE is, without a doubt, they're looking for subscribers to the network, but I think they're missing a couple of pieces to that picture. One of the things that they should be doing is all these biography specials and other specials they put together, put them out on DVD eventually. I see the WWE kind of ignoring their DVDs, and I'm not sure. I understand that they're ignoring their DVDs because they want people to be signing on and paying for the network as opposed to the DVDs, but it's a chance to make money. It's a chance to make money off their library, even if it's not something that has to do with the network. It might be a chance to introduce someone to the network that isn't necessarily signing up for it now. So there's an opportunity for that. Something else with the network that's a huge thing is I think that they're pushing the network out to WWE loyalists. They're saying, hey, everyone that loves WWE and thinks that WWE is the center of the universe and that everything WWE does is the greatest and we've never done anything wrong and everything is gold. These are the guys that sign up for WWE Network, and these are the guys that we're pushing to sign up for the network. But I think they're failing to understand that those people are the ones that are already signed up for the network. Those 700,000 or 800,000 buys that he's got now, they're the ones that are already there. They're already on the network. Vince and WWE, Vince McMahon, the chairman, and WWE as a company need to be chasing down the lapsed fan, the people that have turned off WWE since the folding of World Championship Wrestling, WCW, the people that have left since Extreme Championship Wrestling folded, people that haven't watched since the 1980s or the early 90s. They want to go after these people that haven't watched wrestling in a while and bring them back into it. They are advertising, as far as I know, there might be an ad somewhere else, but they're not really advertising elsewhere outside of their own television programs, which is kind of the same dilemma that ECW faced, which is what was mentioned on their DVD. Paul Heyman had said, well, ECW is only advertised during an ECW show. I've already got those people. Advertise ECW elsewhere. And I think that WWE is not advertising the network elsewhere. If they are, someone drop me a line, podcast at sfpinchicago.com, sfpinchicago.com. Let me know. Have you seen an ad for the WWE Network elsewhere? If so, where have you seen it? Let me know where it is and how they're promoting it. They're just putting it as a WWE Network and expecting people to understand, what's this advertisement? If you want to submit, if it's a print advertisement, you want to submit me a scan. If you want to drop me a line with a video clip, or put a video clip up on YouTube and steer me to a link, that's fine too. Let me know where you see this, because right now I'm not seeing them advertising the network other than on their own programs. And if they really want to get someone other than the people that still loyally watch their shows each and every week, they need to advertise elsewhere, and they need to push what WWE is. If they want the WWE Network to be this lifestyle thing, then they need to push it as that and be able to explain to the common person what that is, so they can make these 300 or 400,000 extra buys to the network, so they can sell the network to these people. So they're not doing what they can to chase after casual viewers who want to see these reality shows, Legends House, whatever else they have. And they're I understand the push to look at more modern content with the Monday Night Wars and World Championship Wrestling and ECW, Eastern Extreme Championship Wrestling, and all that. But again, they're only pushing their content to a certain segment of the audience, and they've got a lot of other footage. Global Championship Wrestling, Smoky Mountain Wrestling, Georgia Championship Wrestling, what would eventually evolve in some weird and twisted way into the National Wrestling Alliance, Jim Crockett's Mid-Atlantic promotion, which would twist and turn and end up as WCW, World Championship Wrestling, World Class Championship Wrestling, the Von Erich's promotion out of Dallas. They own all these different promotions, and they refuse to air all this content. And there's two ways you can take this. One way is saying, well, we refuse to air any of this stuff because it's wrestling and we're sports entertainment, or something totally different. We are not any of this stuff. This is all wrestling. And, Vince bought it just because he gets a hard-on about owning all this other footage. Even if he never uses it, he's happy that he owns it, because no one else can ever use it, and no one else can lay claim to it, and he just wants to say that I own it. And what lends a little bit of credence to this theory is the simulcast of the final WCW Monday Nitro way back in 2001, where he said, I, Vince McMahon, now own my competition. So you can chalk it up to saying, hey, I'm Vince McMahon and I own all these promotions, and I don't care if I show them on the network, because really what I want to push in the network is my WWE and the pay-per-views and all this stuff. And the other school of thought is saying that not all this content is ready for the network yet. Maybe it needs to be digitized. Maybe there are some rights issues holding it back with music. Maybe there's something else that keeps it out of the spotlight. And if you subscribe to that theory, then you have to say, okay, if they intend on using all this footage, then you have to go and tell me, why did you want to go and start up the network if you're not ready to do it yet? If you're not ready to put all this footage out and say what you have, then why did you bother putting it out on the network if you're only going to kind of half-ass it? And a third theory is saying, well, hey, if we put out everything at once, then no one then will get an initial run, and then no one else will subscribe. We'll never have a continuously growing fan base. I dispute that one, because you're not throwing everything out there at once. You're not saying that everything from Georgia is thrown out there, and everything from Mid-South is out there, and everything from World Class out there, and everything Smoke Mountain out there, and every WWF, World Wrestling Federation, footage out there from the beginning of time is all out there all at once for you to take care of, or to take in. you can rotate your footage. Or you can say, we talked about it last time with Ox Baker passing in his time in the World Wrestling Federation. And, we said, hey, you don't need to put all this footage out there all at one time. But you should at least say it's available. It's out there. You can put a few things at a time. You can put it all out there, but not all of it. You can say, hey, we've got some of this footage from Georgia. We've got some of this footage from World Class Championship Wrestling. We've got some of this footage from Smoky Mountain. We'll unveil more of it as time goes on. But here's a little teaser of some stuff that we have to entice some older fans, people that are over 30, over 40, over 50. Is it going to be a chore to get people who might not be as technically savvy as others to buy into this digital over-the-top network? Yeah, but that's a part of the challenge of the network in and of itself. So if you're not willing to take that risk and you're saying, well, we have this network, but it's only marketed towards the people that are currently watching our shows. If you don't watch our shows, we're not interested in you. And if that's the case, then they're really barking up the wrong tree and will never have a shot at making the network succeed. There's a lot of talk and say, well, sure, WWE owns this footage, but it's not all ready to be shown in the network. And there's rights issues, and there's this, and it's not shown right away because they don't want to put it all out there. There's thousands upon thousands upon thousands of hours of wrestling footage out there. There is no way you could ever possibly hope to say, okay, well, I've watched every bit of footage, so I'm done with the network. I've seen everything. That is so not possible to happen. But again, let's say you have all this footage and everything, you stripped out any music that you don't have the rights to and inserted it with your WWE production music that you got from your in-house people. You could at least put a teaser up and say, hey, we've got this footage, something there. But they seem to only want to focus on certain things. And this is why their network is not going to make money, because they're only saying, hey, if you're the type of person that loves John Cena and thinks that John Cena is the best and doesn't care about anyone else and only started watching wrestling from the Attitude Era, you're the fan that we want. If you watched us in 1984, we don't want you. We don't want you to buy our network. We only want those people who are Attitude Era. Those are the people that we want. We don't care about anyone else. Because that seems to be the vibe that I'm getting so far. And I got a kick out of something I saw early in the week where, the world title used to be defended every week on television. Only in the last, 20 years or so. But there was a whole world of wrestling from the 1950s to the 1980s and the early part of the 90s where it was never defended on television. It was only defended on major shows, and the only thing that was defended on television was a television title. But that's a whole different story altogether. And if you're interested in that, you can email me at podcast@sfpinkchicago.com, sfpinkchicago.com, and email me. Email me your thoughts on the WWE Network. Tell me, what do you think is the reason that the WWE Network doesn't have the 1 million plus subscribers that they need to really make money? Is it because of one of the reasons I mentioned? Is it because they're not doing their entire library? Should they be putting more old school content up there? If they're not, are they not putting up there because they want to ignore it because it's wrestling and not sports entertainment? Are they doing it because the audience size isn't very big? There's stuff on YouTube. It's pretty shitty quality. But there's some old stuff on YouTube with old Georgia chapter. There's a lot of promos and stuff, but it's the old TV tapings. And there's a crowd of maybe 50, about what you'd consider now your average independent wrestling crowd. 50 to 100 people in a TV studio for a TV taping. And I know that Vince wants to fill arenas and wants to have, Madison Square Garden filled every single time, with overflow and wants to squeeze. Jim Ross in Beyond the Mat said, as long as there's an ass every 18 inches of seats, I'm happy. And I understand that's the WWE philosophy, and I don't necessarily disagree with that because there's nothing like filling up an arena. But these independent shows, Georgia and all these other promotions, managed to do pretty well for themselves. They managed to sustain a full roster. They managed to do this full time. It was only the WWE that said, or when at that time was the World Wrestling Federation, WWF, that had said, no, we don't like this product. We want our product there, and kind of steamrolled over it and said, look, we got a better production values. We've got, bigger stars. We've got this and all that kind of drew people away. But if you look at some of these old shows from Georgia and everything else, you'll note that in the early part of the 80s, in 81, 82, 83, even up to, maybe 84, 85, these TV tapings would take place in a small TV studio, about 50 to 100 people there, but these people were into it. The fans there were into the shows. They were into everything that the wrestlers were saying. They were into the action in the ring. And it all seemed very organic and very real. You didn't have backstage skits. You didn't have anonymous general managers. You didn't have any of this silly stuff, this extraneous stuff. It was focusing on the wrestling. And again, is this just an evolution of the product where, hey, it's not good enough to have a product to focus on wrestling because that's not entertainment. No one wants to see two guys fighting out for a title. You got to have entertainment. If you don't have two guys talking about their match backstage, how are you ever going to get across the fact that they want to wrestle next week? Why would they ever want to fight for a title when they can talk backstage and have a camera catching this interaction? So, do you have any thoughts on that? If anyone's got any thoughts, again, send your thoughts. Are you a modern fan? Are you a guy that's been a fan from a while back? Do you have a thought on a studio show, a studio taping of 50 to 100 people versus filling Madison Square Garden? Do you have a thought on backstage skits? Are backstage skits a necessary thing to have? Is it necessary to get the product over that we have to have? Is there a requirement now that you can't have a wrestling show without a backstage segment? You can, send me your thoughts. Podcast at sfpinchicago.com. Whatever you send, we'll talk about it on the air. We'll talk about it in a future podcast. We're going to say, hey, this person sent his or her opinion, said, no, the modern wrestling scene isn't anything like that. You can't have a wrestling show unless you have a backstage skit. But something on the topic of backstage skits that's kind of amusing, to me at least, is that the wrestling business, or at least WWE, they all say, oh, we want guys who can talk. We want guys who are not only big and huge and heavily muscled, but we need guys who are able to talk. We want talkers, really charismatic talkers. But one of the major criticisms about WWE that a lot of guys have is that you have writers who write their copy for them. So you say, okay, here's your script. Here's where I want you to be intense. Here's where I don't want you to be intense. I want you to talk about this exactly. Follow the script. Memorize every line of the script and recite it back to me once you have it memorized. And I'll tell you where I want you to have more feeling. So the question is, do you want guys who can talk? Do you want guys like Ric Flair or Dusty Rhodes or The Rock, Steve Austin? You want guys who are able to talk and talk you into an arena? Or do you want actors who can say, okay, I don't know what I want to say. Give me a script, and I'll memorize your script. And you tell me where you want me to have emphasis in this skit and this script, and I'll do that. You just tell me what you want. So do they want an actor who's going to follow a script, or do they want someone who can actually talk? I know that used to be a criticism from a lot of guys. Oh, this guy, he couldn't talk well. Well, that's why you had managers. That's why you have guys like Paul Heyman or Bobby Heenan or Jimmy Hart who would talk for you. And somewhere between the 80s and the 90s and the present, somewhere in between there, the manager as mouthpiece kind of was phased out, and you wanted guys who could talk on their own. And not everyone's going to be able to talk on their own. They might be really great ring technicians, but not be the greatest in a microphone. But that's where you have guys who can talk for you. And that was also why characters like Kamala or others like Kamala, the foreigners, could work because you have a manager. I mean, I don't think someone like Kamala could ever get over in the modern day, because they say, yeah, Kamala, you can't be this Ugandan savage. You got to talk for yourself. You got to do your own promos. You can't allow Kim Chi or Slick or someone else to talk for you. We can't have that. You got to talk for yourself. And it would totally kill his character. His character would never get over the way it did, because he would have to do his own promos, and no one would get his character. So, again, email me, podcast@sfpinchicago.com, with your opinions. Does wrestling really want guys who are able to talk, really charismatic talkers, guys who can do their own thing, like Cena, like Triple H, like Austin, Rock, Hulk Hogan, Dusty Rhodes, Billy Graham if you go even further back? Or do they want guys who can follow a script and say, look, all I want is for you to recite what our writing team has for you. Our writing team will give you your promo word for word and memorize it word for word, and we'll tell you where we want that emphasis. So do you want an actor who's going to follow a script, or do you want someone who's a talker? Because the wrestling business seems to be evolving in two separate directions. There seems to be a conflict. Do you want a talker, or do you want an actor who's going to follow a script? Because even the most charismatic talker, if you give him a list and say, here it is, follow this exactly, is going to fail with a script. Rock, Austin, all these guys, if you give them word for word what you want said, Hulk Hogan, Dusty Rhodes, all these guys will probably fail if you gave them a word-for-word thing and said, this is exactly what we want you to say. Now, you may say, no, these guys wouldn't fail. The writers would come up with something for them. There's no way that Rock or Hogan or all these guys would still make it if they had someone writing their script for them. So, if you think that, podcast@sfpinchicago.com. That's sfpinchicago.com, like SFP, like Shadowfire Promotions. So drop a line to the podcast mailbox and say, no. Hogan should have had his promos written out word for word. Rock could have had his promos written out word. They would include Rock's catchphrase in there and say, okay, Rock, now memorize this part. Now here's the part where we want you to say, if you can smell LLLLLL, we're going to put it just like that for you, okay? So make sure you say it just like that. Or would they have said, no, if you smell what the Rock is cooking, none of this, la 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 la. No, we don't want you to do that. No, don't do that. We got it scripted out this way, exactly, only this way. And don't say the people's strudel and pie. So no one cares. No. Recite it this way. You are going to go in a totally different direction. So yeah, if you think that's the way it would go, and email me and say, no. These guys would still get over. It's not a matter of who's writing out their promos word for word or who isn't writing their promos out word for word. It's just these guys can't handle memorizing a script. Or, these guys should be memorizing a script. So let me know. podcast@sfpinchicago.com, and in one of our future podcasts, we'll take those things and we'll say, hey, this person dropped us a line and said this is what they think. This is kind of an open forum, so if you have something, maybe we'll start having guests later on. We'll start bringing in some extra people and say, hey, tell me your thoughts on some things. So, one of the last couple of things, there's a couple of more things in WWE, and then we'll kind of move on to some other wrestling and some mixed martial arts and some other things. I'm going to backtrack ever so briefly, and we're going to talk a little bit more about CM Punk. So CM Punk has announced that he signed a deal with the Ultimate Fighting Championship. Clearly, whatever deal he's got is something that must take place after his non-compete clause in WWE is completed. He mentioned on the Colt Cabana podcast that he had a no-compete, and he kind of laughed at the fact that even though WWE does not view the Ultimate Fighting Championship, the UFC, as competition, his no-compete clause specifically mentioned that he couldn't work for them, and kind of laughed. He's like, oh, they're not competition until you're done with us. Then they become competition. So obviously whatever deal he's done with them has got to legally fall within the terms of his no-compete clause, because I don't think that the UFC would announce and trumpet they hired CM Punk unless they could get around his non-compete clause. So we'll see what happens come January. January looks to be a very interesting month. I know that Ronda Rousey has another title defense coming up in January. They've had some real interesting cards. And really, UFC does not put on bad cards very often, so we'll see what happens with that. But with CM Punk in there, if he's talking about going into the octagon as opposed to being a broadcaster, it's going to be a very interesting time, and it could be the rise of the next Brock Lesnar, where Brock went from pro wrestling into mixed martial arts. He went into the UFC. They took advantage of his name value and put him into a title shot, a title picture right away. And if it wasn't for his diverticulitis, he probably might have had a much longer run on top. There's a lot of potential in having a longer run on top had he not fallen ill. And there's talk that Brock is healthy now and would like to come back and try another run in the UFC. He's under a contract to WWE until right about WrestleMania, from my understanding of things. But it'd be very, very interesting to see what happens with Brock or with Punk, either one of those guys, in 2015. January 2015 is going to be very interesting because you have CM Punk presumably starting in the UFC. You're going to have the last little push of Brock Lesnar leading into WrestleMania, and see what happens to Brock as a WWE champion throughout the Royal Rumble going into WrestleMania season. So it's going to be a very interesting 2015 for both companies, both WWE and the Ultimate Fighting Championship. Last thing on Punk, Jason David Frank, who is a martial artist and actor. He's most known for playing one of the Power Ranger characters on Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, has publicly gone out and challenged CM Punk to be his first opponent in the Octagon. If you have no idea who Jason David Frank is, A, you're probably not alone, and B, you've never watched Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Or C, both A and B. I don't think I really need to say that there's absolutely no chance in hell, if you'll pardon the Vince McMahon quote, no chance in hell, of Jason David Frank ever competing with CM Punk, because of A and B earlier. No one knows who the hell Jason David Frank is. I don't think that the UFC has any intention of pushing a former Power Ranger to the top of their card to battle CM Punk. It's barely barely a blip on the internet, and I mean barely a blip on the internet. I don't view this as a big thing. I can't imagine Dana White or anyone going and saying, this is a money matchup to put CM Punk in there with a guy who played a Power Ranger on television. I don't see this as a money matchup. I view this as Jason David Frank looking to make some money, looking to make some noise, looking to make some relevance going after Punk. I don't know what bad blood is between these two guys, if there is any bad blood or if he's just making noise. But this is not going to happen. This isn't going to happen because there's no money in CM Punk going up against an ex-Power Ranger. There's more money to be made the same way that the UFC made money off of Brock Lesnar, putting them in there in a high-profile fight. And win or lose, you're making money. Whether CM Punk wins his first fight or loses his first fight, Brock Lesnar lost his first UFC fight, and he still made a lot of money. You know, he lost to Frank Mir, and he still made a crap ton of cash later on, especially when it came to his rematch with Frank Mir, where he pretty much destroyed Frank Mir. And Frank Mir is a very talented fighter, so it's not like Brock is one-dimensional or anything like that. Brock has that background. He's got that background in wrestling. He needed to be, and there's no doubt that I think that Brock would be a heavy hitter. And once Brock refined his skills to go into the octagon, that made him even more dangerous. And CM Punk, in his weight class, could potentially be the next George St. Pierre. So we'll see what happens with that. But I don't think, in this very minor footnote, I don't think that that Jason David Frank is going to be a big blip on the radar for the UFC or for CM Punk. So anyway, that said, there's a couple other things with WWE and sort of around about WWE. Sting recently made his WWE debut. This has to be considered a major coup by WWE, because here's a guy that spent a huge portion of his career in the competition in World Championship Wrestling. He was the face of World Championship Wrestling for a very long time throughout the whole Monday Night Wars. So for him to come to WWE is a major deal. So for me, there seems to be kind of two categories of Sting. There's the mean Sting, which he kind of looked at in like the last couple of years of World Championship Wrestling. And then there's kind of the sad and pouty Sting. Sad and pouty Sting was the first couple of years when he was standing up in the rafters in WCW. He had kind of a pouty Sting. Very sad looking. Always looked kind of sad and pouty. And so with those two categories of Sting, which Sting do you like better? Do you like the kind of sad, pouty little Sting, or the mean Sting, Mean Sting, hey, one thing you can be sure of is nothing's for sure. The mean Sting, the kind of crafty Sting. And I think the mean Sting was when Sting still talked a lot. Or you got, the pouty Sting, the sad Sting, when Sting was up in the rafters because, no one believed in him. So which Sting do you like? Drop me a line, podcast at SFP, like Shadowfire Promotions, IMCChicago.com. Which Sting do you like? Do you like the pouty, sad Sting or kind of the mean Sting, the aggressive Sting? Or do you like Sting from the early part of the 90s when he still had the buzz cut and the kind of surfer kind of persona? Do you like that Sting better? There's that other Sting. Or do you like Wolfpack Sting? Hey, there's all sorts of Stings out there. Hell, do you like Sting from the Police? Hey, if you like that Sting, you say, hey, you know what? Fuck those other Stings. I want Sting from the Police. If you like that Sting better than any of those other Stings, through the Wolfpack and the pouty and the mean Sting. Damn it, Sting with the Police was the best Sting. I promise I won't laugh at you if I see your email. Actually, I take it back. I'll probably laugh at you, but I'll probably still talk about it. So email me, podcast@sfpinc.chicago.com. that aside, Sting at WrestleMania. There has been talk forever about Sting possibly getting a WrestleMania shot against Undertaker. While the two, if you will, longest tenured guys on opposite rosters would be a very interesting matchup, I can't fathom that happening. Probably for the same reason that everyone else couldn't. One is that with Undertaker's loss to Brock Lesnar, somehow I seriously doubt that Taker's going to be taking any other high-profile matches. But assuming that he does, then the pressure is off with Sting being the one to end the streak because Brock Lesnar did. So that kind of pressure might be off both Undertaker and Sting. And there's a lot of potential for it because that pressure is off both guys. But in the category of not going to happen, it's probably not going to happen because I'm not sure that Vince McMahon is convinced that he wants to put someone like Sting, who's been, a member of the enemy company for so long, against someone like Undertaker. Someone would Vince be willing to give Sting such a high-profile spot on the biggest card of the year to battle one of his longest tenured guys? That's a big if. Would Vince be willing to do that? So let me know your thoughts. Podcast at sfpinchicago.com. And while you're at it, you're wondering, what's that domain? sfpinchicago.com. That's my website. Come and take a look at it while you're there. Hey, there are certain portions of the site that aren't active yet. We're working on them. We'll get them up. In the meantime, come there and take a peek. There's a lot of good stuff there. There's a lot of really cool stuff. And I think that, it's some pretty cool stuff, regardless. I think there's a lot of really cool stuff there. A lot of really cool stuff to see. So, check it out. But yeah, send me your thoughts on a WrestleMania match with Sting and The Undertaker. And talk of other legends in WWE. The Macho Man Randy Savage. Macho Man not in the Hall of Fame. No, he's not. Yeah, I'm not in the Hall of Fame. Randy Savage is not in the WWE Hall of Fame. Yet, he would probably be considered a WWE legend. And WWE has absolutely no problem whatsoever off of making money off of him because they've got 3 box sets of this guy already. So they don't have any problem making cash off of this guy, but for whatever reason, he's not good enough to get into the Hall of Fame. There are rumors all over the place about Randy Savage not being in the Hall of Fame. I'm not going to address any of them because they're not relevant. But I don't care the reasons why they're not putting him in the Hall of Fame. I think it's just a matter of the fact that they're not putting him in the Hall of Fame, but they're plenty willing to make money off of a person whose career in both WWE, the World Wrestling Federation, and World Championship Wrestling definitely probably makes him deserving of a spot in the Hall of Fame, probably more so than some other people in the Hall of Fame right now. So, a minor point. I think I know the answer to this one, but tell me your thoughts about Randy Savage in the WWE Hall of Fame. Podcast at sfpinchicago.com. That's podcast sfpinchicago.com. Let me know your thoughts about going and having Randy
something else
in the Hall of Fame.
About Randy Savage
is that, as far as the Hall of Fame goes, is that I don't really think that the Hall of Fame is really the process on which one enters the WWE Hall of Fame is unknown. And I think that if there was some understanding of how one enters the Hall of Fame, or not necessarily a physical Hall of Fame per se, but even some wing of WWE's corporate headquarters that had maybe the plaques of everyone there, it might give people a better understanding, or at least a better impression of the WWE Hall of Fame than what it is. So some things with the wrestlers in WWE. We touched on Sting earlier. Let me actually, going back to corporate WWE as a promotion, there's a couple other things that's kind of stuck out to me in the last week. One is kind of a long-term thing that WWE has been criticized for over the years, which is a real lack of understanding of tag teams and how to push tag teams, especially with the current Bella Twins situation, because here you have a team of identical twins. Yes, they're models. Yes, they're not necessarily the world's greatest technical wrestlers. No one's ever going to mistake them for Ivory or Tori or Molly Holly or any of those people. But here you have an identical twins tag team, and you're not really sure what to do with them, and so you feel that you have to split them apart for no other reason than, there was some jealousy or resentment or something that was never really touched on before in any sort of long-term, meaningful kind of way. And now that they have Nikki Bella having won the Divas Championship, so now what are you going to do? And hopefully there's going to be some reconciliation of the team, but with one of the members of the team with a singles belt, it doesn't seem likely, and I'm really trying to understand what their rationale is for splitting apart a team of identical twins when you don't really have that type of a thing very often. And it's not just a Bella Twins thing, because people are going to say, oh, well, it's just the Divas division, it doesn't matter. But in general, WWE has been criticized for a long time that they don't have a lot of depth in the tag team roster. And it's because WWE doesn't really understand what to do with their teams. I'm not sure why it is that they kind of frown on teams, but they don't, for whatever reason. So something else that has always gotten under my skin with WWE is any time there's a scandal of any sort, someone dies or someone's mad at the company or someone wants to go and talk crap about them in public. Oh, well, we're here to put smiles on people's faces. We're in the business of putting smiles on people's faces. No, you're not. A clown is in the business of putting a smile on people's faces. And realistically, that's about the only occupation where one could realistically say that they're in the business of putting smiles on people's faces. Maybe a professional comedian could theoretically be said to be in the business of putting smiles on people's faces, but WWE is not in the business of putting smiles on people's faces. I don't care if you're the biggest WWE apologist out there and everything WWE does is great, everything they touch is magic. They're not in the business of putting smiles on people's faces. They're in the business of putting on a pseudo-sporting event that we call professional wrestling. That is their business. It is not the business of putting smiles on people's faces. I don't know if other sports events put smiles on people's faces. I don't know if you go to a basketball game or a football game and say, gosh, that game, it just put a smile on my face. I mean, maybe if your team wins, but I don't think so. Otherwise, maybe you don't think so. Again, email me, podcast@sfpinchicago.com. SFP like Shadowfire Promotions. Drop me a line. Tell me, oh, you know what? They are totally, every wrestling company since the beginning of time has been in the business of putting smiles on people's faces. And every wrestler is in the business of putting a smile on your face. Because I sure as hell don't think so. I can't fathom, even sitting here for a week, I can't really fathom why a wrestling company would want to be in the business of putting a smile on your face. You're in the business of making money. That is your business. Right now, WWE's business should be getting more money for their WWE network that they're pushing and pushing really hard, but can't seem to go and top 1 million buys that they need. They thought for sure, oh, we'll just put out the WWE network and everyone will be so eager to get all the pay-per-views for $10 a month. Everyone will buy it and we'll have, 10 million buys. And then it kind of stalled out at about 700,000. And again, as I touched on earlier, it's for the last fan. The last fan has no interest in buying the network. If you are just fine without any WWE pay-per-views, then you're fine without them. And having them in the convenience of your iPad or whatever other toys that you use to connect to WWE Network on isn't going to change a thing. And if you go to the bar to get a WWE pay-per-view, it's not going to change your habits one or the other. So, that should be what they're in the business of, not putting a smile on people's faces, because putting smiles on people's faces does not make you money. It only makes you money if you're a stand-up comic or a clown. The reason being with those two is because if they put a smile on their face, they're doing their job right, and then you're going to pay money to see them again or see them perform again in either case. Am I wrong? Podcast at sfpinkchicago.com. Send me an email. We'll take your answers. We'll put it out in a future podcast edition. The Giant. Is the Giant underutilized? Should he be a killer? Should this guy be the kind of monster heel that just rips up the entire roster? Or should he be the whiny, pouty Giant that, has no future, and every time Stephanie goes and yells at him, he cries? Should he be cast as just another guy on the WWE roster? The point was brought up somewhere, and I don't remember where I saw it, but the point was brought up that the reason why the Giant is not the type of special attraction that he should be is because the days are long gone of territories where he could just travel from region to region to region, just kind of never wear out his welcome in any one place, and thus still remain a special attraction, as opposed to his current role in one company, WWE, where he's going to be on TV frequently in a variety of roles and be able to, for lack of a better term, wear out his welcome. So bottom line, is the Giant underutilized or overutilized, or is he being utilized perfectly, not overexposed, not underexposed, not in a position to be used better? He's not being used in a bad way. He's, being used the best he could be right now. Where does the Giant stand? Right smack dab in the middle. Could he be doing? Could they be doing something better with him? Could they not do something better? Is he perfect where he is? And that brings me to Damien Sandow, another guy. Can he be used any better than he currently is? Could he be used as a better character on television than having him be a stand-in or kind of a clone for The Miz? Is he better off on his own, or is he used as that because either Miz can't get over on his own or he can't get over on his own? Is there some reason why he should be with Miz? Is there a lack of ability for one or the other to be able to get over on her own, that we have to have Sandow be kind of a mini Miz, if you'll pardon the bad pun? So what's going on with him? Is there a better way for him to be utilized? Again, podcast at sfpinkchicago.com. Let me know, hey, Damien Sandow, is this guy perfect where he is and this is the right path for him? Should he be used something else? Is he being used better than he should be? Hey, this guy, he's worthless. He, being a stand-in for The Miz, being a mini-Miz, that's the best he'll ever get to be. He should be getting down his knees, grateful to be there. And I know there's a lot of WWE apologists that'll say, well, it doesn't matter, even if you're getting your head stuck in the toilet each night after someone took a dump there, you're in WWE. You should be proud to have someone taking a dump on your head because you're in WWE. You should be happy to be there. And I know that, this kind of goes and circles back around to CM Punk, where they feel, oh, Punk, he's a nobody. WWE made him. He should have been happy to be there, even though he was hurt and tired, and no one told him what he was getting paid from the network. He should have stayed there because it's WWE. And that kind of goes back to kind of a Star Trek thing. In Star Trek, where Spock had once said, having is not often as pleasing a thing as wanting. It is not logical, but it is often true. And that is for guys like CM Punk or guys who have gone elsewhere for opportunities, whether it be in professional wrestling or somewhere else, where they say, you know what, this is what I thought I wanted, but now that I'm here, it's not really what I want, or it's not what I want anymore. I wanted it for a while, but I don't want it anymore. I'm unhappy here. I don't seem to be, again, to circle around to kind of something Punk said, I'm not happy. I'm not happy with doing my job anymore. I'm not happy coming to work. And that's the worst thing, whether you're in professional wrestling or any other job. If you don't want to be there, that's the shittiest thing in the world, to be at a job that you don't want to be at. So I think we're going to go and quit bashing on WCW or WWE. Excuse me. Going to quit bashing on WWE for a while, but the bottom line is that they are the number one promotion in North America and probably the world right now. So there's going to be a lot of talk with them. That's just the way it is. If someone else was to do a lot more and be a lot more in the public eye, there'd probably be a lot of talk about them. But if I talk too much about WWE, shoot me a line, podcast at sfpinchicago.com, and say, spend more time on something else. Spend more time on this. And if you go and send an email saying, spend more time on something else, then you better follow it up with what do you want to spend more time on. Okay, did I spend more time on something else? What? I can sit there and tell you, hey, I vacuumed my floor today. My floor was a little dusty. I dragged out the vacuum from the closet and vacuumed my floor because I wanted to go and tell everyone who listens to my podcast that, because they said I shouldn't talk so much about WWE. So did my laundry and vacuumed the floor today. I thought I'd let you all know that. Anyway, so Total Nonstop Action Wrestling. They have lost their contract with Spike TV and are moving to Destination America, which my understanding is as part of the Discovery Channel. So, a couple of things. This could be a good opportunity for them, or it could be a bad one. First off, TNA obviously is presenting this as, we want someone to be a true partner with us and not just give us 2 hours of TV time. But as was brought up in the Pro Wrestling Torch newsletter, why would Spike TV want to invest more in them? Why would they be a better, bigger partner to TNA and give them more than just 2 hours of TV time, when the 2 hours of TV time that they have on Spike TV, an episode of Cops can do about the same, or something else. To get a 1.0 isn't really that great, even for basic cable. So why would they want to give TNA more than the time of day, so to speak, when they can't even sustain a good rating for that channel? I don't expect them to be drawing like 5s and 6s, but on the other hand, they can't even really keep a solid 1.0 throughout their show. They kind of fluctuate 1.0, 0.8, 0.9. They're kind of all over the place, and it's kind of reflects their booking direction for the company, where they don't even really know what they're doing. But they're saying, this is a great opportunity. They're committed to our show. They're committed to all this stuff. Well, it's good that someone's committed to the product, because it does not often seem like the company itself is committed to their product. This has been a criticism of the company pretty much since its inception, and with all the changes that the company has had, they haven't changed some of the most basic things that give people a certain impression of the company. That impression being that it is either WWE light or the soft landing pad for guys who are cast off by WWE. You know, hey, you were released from WWE, come on over here and work. You know, it's kind of the retread federation. We're going to be everything the World Championship Wrestling did 10 years ago, we're going to do it again today. Hey, today is the new 10 years ago sort of thing. So, yeah. But obviously, being seen on a smaller channel there's no way to paint this as a good thing. I don't care what TNA says in their press releases. It's not a good thing. There's no way you can really spin it off as a good thing. There's less people seeing your product, which is a bad thing because there's not that many people seeing their product right now. So the last thing they need is for even less people to be seeing their shows. They don't have the vast library, the vast resources that WWE has, but they should be trying to focus on everything that WWE is not. If WWE doesn't like tag teams, they should be pushing tag teams. If WWE likes to have super heavyweights and, big guys, they should be focusing on guys like AJ Styles. If WWE doesn't like to have women, then they should have a lot of women. And TNA started off really good with having Mickie James and Gail Kim and the former Victoria, Tara, Lisa Marie Verone, whatever name she's using there, because I know a lot of people know her by whatever name, her former WWE name. A lot of people know her by her real name since she uses that with her pizza place now. But in any case, you got Lisa Marie, you had Mickie James, you had Gail Kim, you've got all these really outstanding women wrestlers that could really work. And they choose to just kind of not go there and not, the whole idea, at least from my understanding, the whole idea of the Knockouts division to begin with was, hey, these are great women wrestlers. They're not models. They're great-looking, in-shape women wrestlers, but they're not utilizing them to the extent that they could. And they're not utilizing most of their male roster the way they could. For a long time, they put guys up on top who were or are ex-WWE guys, ex-World Championship Wrestling guys who had been around during the Monday Night Wars, and they said, well, hey, we're gonna show how good we are by getting all these guys that WWE has gotten rid of. And no one wants to be known as the recycler of talent. Hey, no one else wants this guy, so we'll pick him up. We'll have a bidding war for a guy that nobody wants. Someone offered you $1? They just wanted $1, and that's all? I'll give you $50. It just seems counterproductive. Maybe it's just me. Again, podcast at sfpinchicago.com. What are your thoughts on TNA? Are they on the right track? Do you think that this is a chance for them to do something good? I think it's a chance for them to do something good, and the first thing they could do good is get rid of those ridiculous initials, TNA, because it's too close to TNA, like tits and ass. And it's the most ridiculous acronym for a pro wrestling show because it doesn't even have the word wrestling in there. You can call it Total Nonstop Action Wrestling, but I don't really think that's their corporate name. They don't say it's TNA Wrestling, it's just TNA. And so the first thing they got to do is get rid of that ridiculous acronym and rebrand their image into something with wrestling in there. Maybe they just changed it to Impact Wrestling officially. I know for a while they kind of threw out the idea that they were going to try and rebrand themselves, or the show. The show was called Impact Wrestling. It was TNA or TNA's Impact Wrestling, kind of like WWE's Monday Night Raw. But they need to rebrand themselves in a major way, in multiple major ways. They need to get rid of that stupid acronym TNA, Call yourselves Impact Wrestling. Call yourself something. Anything that has the word wrestling in there. Total nonstop action sounds, first off, besides sounding like TNA is in tits and ass, it also sounds like someone said, let's get a couple of action words and we'll stuff them all together. It's kind of like that 1966 show Batman, you know, bam, biffy, pow, and okay, we're going to have a federation. We're going to look at the Batman show, and, you know, the first three little action word balloons that come up, we're going to put them all together, and that's going to be the name of the company. Because that's what it kind of seems like. It doesn't make any sense in a pro wrestling perspective. So they need to change that. With less eyeballs in their television show, again, this is a chance to really try and do something. I'm not sure what the solution to their problem is, except perhaps be consistent and do wrestling and, you know, have stories and angles and, you know, action stories and angles that make sense and action in the ring that people want to see. You know, less soap opera, less retread guys, and more focus on the talent that they have, more focus on that technical proficiency in the ring. You know, you got to find an identity for yourself and find an identity for yourself that works. Because if that promotion ends up going out of business, saying we can't sustain ourselves, or if Dixie Carter's dad decides that he's spending just way too much money and getting absolutely nothing out of it, because I'm pretty sure he hasn't. I mean, it's a matter of how long is Daddy Bob Carter going to keep shoveling cash at his daughter for his daughter's little pet project of TNA wrestling before he says, you know what, I'm tired of giving money and not getting any of this stuff back. You know, Dixie dear, I love you, you're my daughter. Are you ever intending on making any money, or is this just going to be a giant pit of, you know, am I just like taking $100 bills and flushing them down the toilet? Because if you want a giant, I mean, most independent wrestling in general is a money pit. Half of it is because the people that are in charge of independent wrestling have no clue what the heck they're doing, or they know what they're doing and just don't care and just want to use it to see how far they can get as a platform to entertain themselves or entertain some of the wrestlers, or maybe entertain someone else. Maybe not the crowd, but, you know, most companies that don't make money like that in pro wrestling, if you're just flushing money down the tubes like that and you're not seeing the audience buy into what you're selling, and if you're not seeing, you know, your TV ratings even hold steady throughout a show, you have to really start rebranding and saying, what can we do better? And that's what you have to do. You have to decide, what can we do better to make ourselves a better product? You know, first off, call yourself something with wrestling. You know, work with the wrestlers you have. Quit trying to worry about every single guy that WWE has cast off. You know, focus on the here and now. Don't be focusing on the past. Because if it goes out of business, there's going to be a lot of talent that's going to be out of work, and they're not going to have any place to go. And it's going to end up being exactly like what happened when Extreme Championship Wrestling folded, and then World Championship Wrestling folded, and you had Jeff Jarrett and all of his buddies who said, we don't have jobs, now what the hell do we do? You know, here we are, we thought we'd have jobs forever, you know, because we had a World Championship Wrestling and we had all of our buddies there, and now the company went under and WWE doesn't want us. Now what do we do? And that was the basis of TNA when it started. And now TNA is where WCW was, you know, 14, 15 years ago. And if you have something March 26th, 2015, where TNA goes out of business, you're going to come full circle. I don't want to see it go under because I'm a fan of wrestling. I'm a fan of all wrestling. I'm a better fan of wrestling that you know, has good talent and good storylines and everything else, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I want to see other wrestling companies go out of business. So I wish, you know, that I think Jim Ross touches on this in his podcast all the time. I don't want to see any wrestling company go out of business. I like wrestling. I like wrestling more when there's good talent and good action and something holds my attention, but I realize that there's something for everyone and there's enough pro wrestling in the world for everybody. So, I hope that it stays around a long time. But it doesn't seem like they're aiming towards that particular goal at this time. But like I said, I hope they do. So the next wrestling company out there, Global Force Wrestling. Now, I'm having a little trouble with Global Force Wrestling. I've been to their website. I've seen their stuff. Their merchandise section consists of autographed photos of Jeff Jarrett and Karen Jarrett. But they don't really have a talent roster at all. Not the last time I looked, they didn't have a talent roster at all. No talent roster is listed. I could be wrong in my assessment that I don't think there are many people that are chomping at the bit to get autographed promo photos of Jeff Jarrett and Karen Jarrett. But if I'm wrong, go and send me an email. Again, podcast@sfpinchicago.com and tell me, I am the world's biggest Jeff Jarrett fan, slap nuts. I have every Jeff Jarrett thing ever produced. I would go and follow Jeff Jarrett. I would personally be Jeff's bootlicker because Jeff Jarrett is the greatest ever and you're just a slap nuts. Go ahead and tell me. Hey, if you're a Jeff Jarrett fan, let me know. If you hate Jeff Jarrett, don't let me know. Why? Because there's enough people out there with that. I'm not a Jeff Jarrett apologist, but on the other hand, I know there's plenty of people that don't like Jeff Jarrett. So I don't need to hear from the people that are anti-Jarrett. I know who you are. There are probably a lot of you. I'm neutral about Jeff Jarrett. I think his gimmick's a retread of Honky Tonk Man, and I think it's kind of amusing that Jeff Jarrett is using a gimmick that is well over 15 years old to try and get himself over. But, that's his thing, so if that's his thing, then so be it. So the thing with Global Force is I'm not seeing a roster. I don't see a fully made website. There's not a lot of merchandise. There's not a roster. Everything points to the New Japan show. So the question that I have is Global Force Wrestling a real wrestling promotion? Is it a wrestling company like Total Nonstop Action, like TNA? Is it a promotion like New Japan? Is it a promotion like WWE where they have talent in the roster and they do shows and, all this? Or is it just a company that says, hey, our only real purpose here is just to go and show off, foreign companies. We're not a wrestling company in and of itself. We're just here to show off other wrestling companies. Because I'm not quite sure what it is. I'm not really sure what it is right now. It seems to be something where it's just a company that partners up with foreign companies and puts, a couple of guys onto their show and says, well, here, this is a Global Force thing. It's kind of Global Force, meaning one or two guys of Jeff Jarrett's friends, Scott Steiner, Jeff Jarrett, on this other show in Japan or Ireland or Great Britain or Scotland or whatever. And so when I was looking at the different comments on YouTube for Global Force Wrestling, one of the things that I found absolutely hysterical was Scott Steiner, who says, the people want something different. We're here to offer something different, when he's got the same look that he stole basically from Superstar Graham, which was stolen by, tons of other people. It's not like he's the only person who's ever stolen from Superstar Graham, but he's got the same look that he has adopted pretty much at the same time Jeff Jarrett did. So he's got the same look and feel that he's had since 1999. So for Scott Steiner to say, oh, the people want something different. You look at TV and, we don't want to be WWE. We don't want to be, any of these other companies. Well, that's a very noble goal. Can't fault him for that. Not a bit. But for him to sit there and say that with a straight face while he has the same gimmick he's had for the past 15 years is a little silly. Even Undertaker's changed his gimmick once or twice, to on his way to becoming the hybrid Undertaker that we all know and love today. So for Scotty to be doing that, it's a little hypocritical. So I just thought that was funny. So hey, if you're a Scott Steiner fan, if you're a fan of Big Papa Pump, send me an email, podcast@sfp-inc-chicago.com. Tell me that you're one of Scott Steiner's freaks. Tell me that, hey, just because, you shouldn't change perfection. Scott Steiner's had the same image for 15 years because that's obviously the way people want to see him. And just because he's over 50 doesn't mean that, he can't be saying we want change. So let me know. Podcast@sfp-inc-chicago.com. Let me know Global Force Wrestling, Scott Steiner, Jeff Jarrett, all these things, especially with Global Force. I really want to hear what people think of Global Force Wrestling. Is it really a wrestling company, or is it just a company that is there to put a bunch of guys on, piggybacking, if you will, on someone else's show? Is it Jeff Jarrett, Scott Steiner, a couple other guys that are saying, hey, we're not really a company. Our company basically exists to kind of put a few guys on someone else's show to get them work. So, because that's the way it comes off. It comes off as very retread. Guys still doing the Wolfpack symbol. Guys who have been doing the same image for 15 years or so. So, if I hope it's not Global Force Wrestling's official motto that, hey, we're doing something different, because it doesn't seem like it right now that you're not. So, maybe you are, maybe I don't see it. But for a guy who spends all his time watching videos and DVDs of pro wrestling, if that's their example of doing something different, then they're hoping that people have a very, very short attention span, because that's not it. So maybe Global Force Wrestling is something different. Maybe it's different because, hey, it's the only federation that's got guys that are still using the same gimmick from 15 years ago. People say, oh, Undertaker's still using the dead man thing, but his image has changed. He may still no sell, and he may be the supernatural thing, but I don't think that in 2000, let's see, in 2000, he was just a little bit shy of using his biker gimmick, and he was at the tail end of his Ministry of Darkness, kind of satanic Undertaker thing. So if you compare that to what he's doing now, I think that you'd be hard-pressed to say that Undertaker's doing the exact same thing. And I think if you look at 2000 and look into when he joined the World Wrestling Federation at the time, when he had the big Mortician's gimmick, the Old West Mortician thing, I dare say that was a lot different than what he was doing as a member of the Ministry with the Druidic Satanic Undertaker. So to say that, he's doing the same thing isn't true. Kane definitely isn't doing the same thing. And I don't even Hunter Hearst Helmsley, Triple H, isn't doing the same thing. Hulk Hogan barely qualifies as having done the same thing for 15 years. He may be going back to the red and yellow shtick, but even he changed it up a little bit, and he wasn't doing the same thing. I think that Hogan qualifies as having done the same thing from basically when he entered into the World Wrestling Federation till the NWO in 1996, New World Order. So he just barely qualifies as that, but even he changed it up. Here you've got in Global Force, you got guys who are doing the exact same thing, no tweaks, no changes, nothing, while they're saying the fans want something different. Okay, so we're going to move on real quick. We got a lot more things to talk about. We got some mixed martial arts that we got to talk about. We got some comics we got to talk about. We got a couple more in memoriams here that I'll talk about at the tail end of things. But let's talk Facebook. Facebook is pretty much the top of the line when it comes to social media. Just as MySpace was the top dog for its time, Facebook is now. Facebook is publicly traded, like WWE. So they're under the pressure to show more and more profit every quarter because that's what investors have come to expect. They have come to expect that every publicly traded company absolutely must show profit every single quarter, and you must never ever lose money. Your stock must never ever go down, and if it does, investors will leave you in a second, which is probably the best example of why never to be publicly traded, because Wall Street has a very perverted idea of how a company works, how a company runs, any company. It has nothing to do with wrestling or social media or anything else. It shows what kind of a skewed vision that they have, and it kind of is the reason for things like the Enron scandal and WorldCom and Tyco and all these other companies that have shown fraud. They showed fraud because, hey, Wall Street expected us to show profits quarter after quarter after quarter ad nauseum, and we couldn't live up to that expectation. So, what am I getting at? Well, Facebook is trying to say any fan page, any group, any like our page, if it's something that you click like on, so a fan page, a band page, a group page, anything like that, Facebook is making an effort to go and say, you don't want to see that. The only thing you're going to see is the major corporations that pay us to show their ads, and pay us a lot to show your ads. So I've noticed there's a lot more surveys there. Do you think this is advertising? Do you think this is not? Do you think this is a plug for a certain product? You've got to tell us if you think that. Yeah, but they want to, they're saying, the free ride is over. If you're a fan page, you're no longer going to have any sort of presence on a personal page. So if you have, your personal page, Joe Blow, you will never see an ad for anything that you click like on unless it's a paid ad. So you're going to see, ads for Coca-Cola and Pepsi. I mean, just by way of example. Not necessarily saying that these are the ads they're showing, but, you're going to see these paid ads for, Tide detergent and Coca-Cola and all these companies that are paying them big bucks to show their ads because that's what they want. They're hoping they'll interact and you'll click on them, and you can ignore them for now, but I would not be surprised if in the near future Facebook moves to prevent you from blocking advertisements on your page. To the best of my knowledge, I haven't done that yet, but I wouldn't necessarily be surprised if that is the next step for them. So, and you say, okay, well, what's the big deal? You should go and be able to pay if you're getting exposure. Well, the problem is with Facebook, at least, is you're not getting what you pay for. You can pay them, and you can pay for advertising, but you're not really getting anywhere. Last summer, I had set up the S&P page as a paid page, went and paid for some advertising, and then I set up a bunch of unrelated emails to go and check out things and join Facebook under a variety of different names, and I had some close friends of mine that were aware of who it was, add my page so I could kind of see what was going on. Never saw any of my ad anywhere. The money ran through the money that I only set up maybe $100 or so, very small amount because I didn't really want to spend a whole ton until I kind of saw what type of return on investment I was getting. But I put maybe about $100 out there, never saw a single ad, saw a couple of likes new click likes. Try looking at those profiles. Never saw anything. Like literally nothing. These no photos, no mutual friends, no friends at all. Like, even if you don't have mutual friends on the page, you might say, okay, friends, this guy's got like 104 or whatever. Never seemed to have any friends, came from a foreign country, no photos on the page, no history on the page, no posts on the page. And this was a pattern, a consistent pattern I saw over and over and over again with every single page that liked that SFP page. There was no profile information, nothing, not a single thing on any of these pages. And then slowly those likes and none of these likes ever interacted with the page, ever. There was no interest in wrestling or mixed martial arts or comics or music or movies or anything that we do. It just happened to be a like of that page. And okay, I get this impression, and a week after, that like slowly disappears, and I'm back down to normal with the people that have profiles because, contrary to popular belief, you can see who likes your page. You can see their profiles. You might not be able to interact with them, but you can see them. You can absolutely see them. And there was nothing on any of these pages, and Facebook has been accused of, in the past, being what is called a click farm, which basically, it's kind of tech jargon to mean that you have people in a foreign country who are paid to do nothing but sit at their computer and click like on certain pages when they're told to by Facebook. They don't have to maintain a profile or anything like that. They just have to open up a page, click like, and then never do anything else ever again, and just open up profiles, just blank profiles, kind of the equivalent of if you ever had kind of a spam ad on MySpace where you added something and they never said anything, or started posting all sorts of ads, or if you have instant messenger programs and it's going to say, hey, what's going on? Hey, up for chat? I am 21F, I'm horny. Okay, and who are you? So, hey, my husband is gone. Want to appear on cam? Just random stuff. So that was that's kind of like the equivalent of like a click farm where you set up a profile, you'll click on a certain page, and then you just kind of abandon that profile, and eventually Facebook will get around to deleting it because it means nothing to them anyway. And for the Facebook apologists that say, well, you should be paying for stuff, I'm going to reiterate, don't have a problem with paying for things, but I've got to get something in return. If I'm not going to get anything out of Facebook, if I'm paying for an ad on Facebook and I'm not getting any impressions in Facebook, and I have no way to determine if my ad is being shown on Facebook, but yet Facebook is charging me, well, that's kind of bullshit. You should be able, if you're advertising, you should be able to determine, hey, where is my ad airing? Can I see where my ad is airing? If you're not seeing where your ad is appearing, then and they're saying, hey, we're charging you for your ad, but we're not going to tell you where it appears at. Just trust us that your ad is appearing somewhere. Most logical people are going to say, wait a minute, you're going to take my money, promise me that you're going to run my ad, but you're not going to tell me where and when my ad is running? I know a friend of mine that worked at a place for a while that dealt in radio ads. And the whole gimmick is that you cold call businesses, tell them, hey, we're going to run your ad in a form of missing children PSAs, public service announcements, or veteran public service announcements, some sort of public service announcement, a lot of different public service announcements. And you were supposed to push real hard, well, it's not, really an ad per se, it's a public service announcement, it's for the kids, it's for the animals, the missing children's, or animal shelter, or veterans help, or something, and a kind of high pressure. Don't you care about the kids, the fuzzy animals, the veterans? Don't you care about them? You should really go and run this thing because it's not really about your business. We just, want to talk about how great your business is that you're helping out with trying to find these missing kids, these fuzzy animals, whatever. Kind of high-pressure sales tactics like that. But, when you say, okay, sure, when's Matt going? Well, we don't really know when your ad's going to run. Because we don't really guarantee a certain ad time because, those certain ad times, if you want a certain ad time, cost a lot of money. And since we're only selling it to you for like $50 or $100 or something, we really can't tell you when your ad is going to run. And they kind of push it like that. I can tell you, I'm not a guy that sleeps a whole lot. I've had my radio on multiple stations, on at 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning. I have never heard any of those ads for any of the different public service announcements. I don't even know what they run at all. I've never seen any proof ever that those ads are even running anywhere. For all I know, it could just be that they take the money and not give you anything. And that's the thing with Facebook. You're saying pay for advertising, but they refuse to say when your ad will appear or where your ad will appear. And, we can't show you. We'll just tell you that your ad had this many impressions this week, but still you got to pay us money. And then that's kind of a bullshit thing. And for those of you with personal profiles, you might notice that Facebook always wants to go and ask you for more. Hey, just to remind you, you haven't filled out what high school you went to, and you haven't filled out how many jobs you had in your career, and your age, and how many times you've been married, and what your hometown is. And it's not a matter of profile completion or whatever other bullshit that Facebook wants to feed to you. They're pushing you to complete that stuff because they want to be able to sell your information to their advertisers. They want to be able to say, hey, we've got X many people from this area, Y many people, that are in Y age group, of Z gender, because that's information, demographical information that their sponsors, that their advertisers are going to covet, and they're going to go and try and tailor their ads to that. Hey, if you're a 39-year-old male from, New York, or whatever, they're going to try and tailor that ad to you. And Facebook has in the past, I don't know if they're still going to continue doing this, say, is this ad relevant? You see that on Hulu every so often. Is this ad relevant to you? No, it's not relevant. Is it going to stop them from showing you that ad? No, not really, because you interacted with that ad, and that's all they care about is that you interacted with it, even, positive or negative, you interacted with their ad, and all the information you have in your personal profile, who you're married to, your age, your location, where you lived in the past, your jobs, your hometown, where you went to school, all that stuff is going to be eventually, if it's not already, sold to advertisers. I know there's going to be people out there that'll listen to this and say, oh, no way, man, Facebook would never use my info without telling me. I don't believe that. No. You don't have to believe it. I do. I have no problem believing that your personal information to be sold to advertisers. I know a lot of people don't look at the bottom line in terms of user agreements. They skim, oh, yeah, I accept the terms. Did you read the terms? Have you ever read the terms? I know PayPal is like the biggest thing since before bread was sliced. Oh, PayPal, that's brilliant, it's beautiful, it's so great. Oh, I love it. PayPal is the best. But you don't read the little fine print that says, PayPal can at any time shut down your account for any reason it sees fit and take the money within there. You don't see the fine print that says we're not really a bank, we're not really a merchant account. We don't really have to follow the rules that a credit card merchant account would have. So we can kind of do our own thing. Some people say, oh, PayPal is good because it's more anonymous. Who's going to give your credit card rating or excuse me, your credit card number to, Joe Blow's business? But you're going to give it to PayPal? You're going to put it on the internet? I mean, I would think that's worse to go and put on the internet. The excuses are, well, PayPal is hacked. Sure, it's hacked all the time, but so is Target and Walmart. Yeah, but they've got a lot of people that can, run damage control on that. And, I'm not necessarily seeing PayPal or eBay be sitting there and saying, we'll take corrective measures to make sure this doesn't happen a second time, or we'll make sure your information is safeguarded. We'll give you options to that if your information is compromised, we'll give you options to make sure that we make this up to you. And I'm not seeing PayPal do that. And in the end, it's all about what type of profit they can make. And I think that if you do a lot of business online, if you buy or sell online, if you're a buyer, there's not really a whole lot you can do other than try to pay with more conventional means. If you're a seller, I would strongly recommend you go to your financial institution and talk about opening up a merchant account, a true merchant account, because there's a lot more safeguards with that, and people are a lot more open to a true merchant account than they are with PayPal, and there's a lot more options available, not just for dispute resolution, if there is such, but just in terms of safety and security. And that brings me to net neutrality. First off, let me there was an article in the Wall Street Journal, to kind of backtrack a little bit. There's an article in the Wall Street Journal about Facebook and how all these people have all these huge Facebook fans, and their businesses are suffering because they're not paying PayPal for ads and stuff, and saying, well, really, and Facebook's official stance, which is kind of a duh, says, well, really, it's a niche thing if you're not paying for ads. Really, we see the paid ads as being more the way to go to reach more people. And, of course, duh, what's Facebook going to say? Yeah, really, the paid way is not much. I mean, you should really ignore it. It doesn't do much. PayPal says, Facebook says that, you can have your presence there and we're not going to stop you, but you're not really going to be seen by anyone. It's there. We want your presence, but, we want your money. And Facebook is saying, one of their quotes is, we don't want them to spend any dollar with us unless it's doing something spectacular to help them grow their business. But I'm not sure, at least as of last summer, I'm not sure that they're doing anything spectacular, as they say, to help people grow their business. I think if they did something spectacular, I think more people would be pushing out money to things like Facebook or Twitter or something else. I think there's a way to monetize social media, but I'm not necessarily sure that that paid and paid ads are a part of it. Don't get me wrong, but the idea that you should not be able to contact people, you shouldn't be able to contact the people that are your Facebook fans. You shouldn't be able to reach out to these guys. You got to reach out. Reach out to Facebook, and Facebook will contact them for you. So it's kind of what's considered renting an audience, and promote your post and this. I don't see that as being anything as of last summer. I don't, but again, if I saw these posts as doing something, I'd have zero problems with paying that for that. I think we do pretty well with what we have in terms of likes and our own promotion and such. I don't spend a lot of money advertising. I don't spend nothing, but I spend something. I'm not necessarily sure that social media promoted posts or paying social media in general is the way to go. Not yet, at least, because social media has to show me something. But that's, and something else that's really important, you say, okay, how does this affect me? Well, what it affects you, the individual, is that if you like a page, any page, whether it be the page for this band that you really like, or my page, SFP, Shadowfire Promotions, if you like any page at all, you should see it. If you want to know when this favorite rock band you like is putting out a new album, this indie band, it's an indie band. It's not like it's some huge band with a lot of money. You want to know when this great indie band is putting out a new CD or where they're going to be. If you like their page, you should see their posts on your page. Facebook is saying, no, you don't want to see this post. You don't want to see this post from, Joe's band. You don't want to see them. You want to see this ad that we have because they paid us. See this ad for Coca-Cola. This is what you want to see this ad for Metallica because they paid us a lot of money. And this is not a diss against Metallica, okay? I like Metallica. Don't have a problem with them. I don't want people to get in, you're shitting all over Metallica. I'm just throwing out a name. It was the first CD that was in front of my face here. You want me to come up with a new name? Fine. You don't want to see these posts from Joe's band. You want to see Jimbo Band because Jimbo Band is a major label band and they're our sponsor and they pay us $1 million to show that. So you really want to see them. I know that you clicked like on Joe's band, Joe's Garage Band page, but you don't really want to see them. So this is where it affects you, is you, the individual, are going to start seeing a lot less of pages and posts from pages that you have actually clicked like on. And this is not something new. This is something that's been going around for a while, where you should be seeing less from pages that you do like and click like on, and you'll be seeing more sponsored and promoted posts because these are the ones that Facebook says, hey, they paid us, so we're more inclined to show you these posts, and we want to show you more of these posts. We want to show you less and less of the ones that you do like because we want to encourage you to pay us money. So, look for that in the near future. If it's already happening, really, it's already happening. So, that's, if you have any questions on this type of thing, or if you got any bitches, grouses, what have you, send me an email. We'll talk about it on a future edition of this podcast. If you say, no, I love Facebook. Facebook is the best thing since before bread was sliced, and thank goodness for Facebook, they save the universe. Whatever. Drop me a line, podcast@sfpinchicago.com. Tell me all about how Facebook, saved your sister from certain death and destruction at the hands of the evil villain, whatever. And, in any case, shoot me a line, let me know. One of my next internet rants, if you will, is the concept of net neutrality. Now, my techie friends, like Nick Wadier, who is one of the people that helped create this podcast in terms of help me set it up and get everything kind of started, and is still going to help me out a little bit in getting us into iTunes and everything else. So check him out, Nicholas Wadier, Wautier. His business is Wadier Entertainment. He's a DJ. He does tech stuff. He's the tech guru, kind of the king of podcasts locally, at least local for me. He's out of Green Bay, Wisconsin, actually. But he's photography, DJ, voiceover, does all sorts of things. Great guy, very knowledgeable, really intelligent guy, very, very tech savvy. So, If you need someone to help you with something that's a very tech-savvy, sort of a very intense technical sort of thing, hit up Nick. Find Nicholas Waudier, Waudier Entertainment, again, Wautier, Waudier Entertainment. Check him out. Again, real smart guy. Very, very good at what he does. He helped me out. He's helped me out with a lot of coding on the Shadow Fire page, sfpinchicago.com. Speaking of Facebook and Facebook rants, hey, if you want to get on our Facebook page, it's facebook.com/sfpinchicago. If you want to get on our Twitter, it's twitter.com/sfpinchicago. Do you see a pattern yet? Hopefully you do. Anyway, so net neutrality. Basically, in a nutshell, net neutrality is a fancy expression for the concept that everything should be equal all across the internet. So your post about, oh, isn't this, kitten cute, or isn't this dog liking his cat, in the same house, cute, should be absolutely the same as my big business ad. I should be able to run at the same bandwidth with everything being equal all across the board. My stuff should never be more important than yours. It's kind of, in not internet terms, it's kind of like saying that it's a favoritism thing. There should never be favoritism of one over another because of money. That's basically what net neutrality is in a nutshell. It's saying just because Amazon has more money than you to set up a page, if you want to set up a website to sell CDs, or in my case, wrestling stuff, I should have the same exact ability to have my page, all things being equal, my page should load every bit as fast as Amazon's page, and when I say all things being equal, that's, in terms of how much I'm using, how much bandwidth I'm using. If I have heavy graphics or something and it loads really slow because of that, that's a different story. But it should load at equal speeds, all things given. And what it basically means is, again, your kitten video should be treated with equal importance as this, Amazon or eBay or anything else. Movies you watch online, streaming. Hulu is a part of NBC. So let's say that you stream through Netflix. Well, if your internet provider is Comcast, which is a part of the NBC Universal family, they don't like Netflix because they don't own Netflix. So they're going to slow down Netflix's stream until you say, you know what, this isn't worth it. I'll just sign up for Hulu because Hulu is faster. And people would like to give you the impression that, hey, if you're a big business, you should be able to pay for a fast lane so you can be ultra fast. But what that really means is, kind of the universal translator from Star Trek. What that really means is, it's not really that I have a fast lane. What it means is you have a slow lane. It means that I have a regular speed lane and you get a slow lane. Anything that you do, if you stream through Netflix and we don't own it, we have that right. We have the right to slow it down. We have a right to make sure that you will never do anything unless the cable companies, the internet providers all agree that it should be that way. I'm probably not explaining it good enough, but if you're interested in the concept, and if you're an internet user, anything, if you have a web page, if you stream videos, if you upload videos, if you upload pictures, if you do anything online, you really should. If you stream any movies, not just WWE Network or anything else, if you stream anything, you should go and look into net neutrality in in detail, in a lot of detail. It's really something that more people need to be informed about. But the most basic definition I give, and you know, if you want a better definition, you again talk to Nick Wautier. Nick probably can explain this 100 times better than I can. But if you do anything online, if you upload pictures or videos or anything else, basically the concept means that everything on the internet should be equal, and that one person's information packet, you know, your bytes should not be any more important than mine. Everything should be equal all across the board. No one gets any fast lanes. No one gets preferential treatment to say, well, Amazon gets the right because they paid for it to have their page load faster than my little shopping page because my internet service provider is in bed with Amazon, and they decided that Amazon should load up faster because they own the company, and mine should be slowed down just enough that it makes people go away. And it really, if you really want to get to the nitty-gritty of it, it's a way to stifle small business. It's a way to stifle small business, just like the notion a few years ago that's still kind of a sore spot for people that buy and sell over the internet, especially people that, well, yeah, buy and sell over the internet. There was a notion going around, again, if you're not a real, you know, in-depth tech person, you probably wouldn't be aware of this, but Nick might be the person to talk to. Again, he'll probably explain it 100 times better. But there was the notion that the government says, you know what, we should have an internet tax. We should tax anything you buy on the internet. So if you shop on Amazon and say, oh, you know what, I'm going to skip the sales tax, I'll get the same thing on Amazon and I, you know, get a little cheaper and I'm not paying a sales tax. They're saying, yep, no more free ride. You bought this thing in Washington and you live in New York, you're paying a sales tax. And if you're that guy that's selling that candy, that bag of candy, you're going to pay that sales tax. You're going to pay New York sales tax. You're going to pay Florida, and every state you've ever sold in, you'll pay that state sales tax. And if that city, you know, you sold to Tampa, Florida, and Boca Raton, you get to pay the sales tax for both of those counties as well, both of those cities. So, you know, more tax, more tax. The government needs more tax to run. And what I thought was kind of funny about that thing, I read something maybe a year ago, maybe a little more. Nick, you can probably explain this better, but I thought an anecdote that I thought was really, really funny and a big kind of FU in the face of the government officials to say, you know, more tax, more tax. Amazon was considering building a warehouse. I forget what they were building or whatever. But they said, oh, yeah, you know, you can build your warehouse, and we'll tax everything about it. And the government officials like, this is so cool. We're going to, oh, man, we're going to get like $1 million. How can we spend it? Oh, man, there's so much money here. How can I spend all this money? And Amazon said, yeah, that's nice. I'm not building it anymore. You know, I'll take my business elsewhere. I'm not happy. I'll take my business elsewhere. It's kind of funny just because, you know, government officials are just salivating metaphorically at the prospect of getting all this money from Amazon. Hey, it's Amazon. If Amazon comes here, all the money in taxes we're going to get from them, they were spending it all before they even got it. You know, hey, it's like when you're a little kid, oh man, if I wash the dishes, I'm going to get like 35 cents. Man, I'm going to get a pack of gum, and then I'm going to go get myself an Archie comic. Oh man, I'm so rich, I'm going to have all this money. Maybe if I get some money left over, I can buy something else. You know, and they're spending all this money before they got it. And Amazon kind of said, no, we're not going to build a distribution center. We were thinking about it, but yeah, we changed our mind. But again, check out Nicholas Wautier, Wautier. Check him out. Wautier Entertainment. Nick is the go-to guy for everything technology related. He is the go-to guy, photography, technology, DJ. He's really a real jack of all trades, and he's really, you know, he does web pages and all sorts of things, and
he can probably explain all these concepts a lot better than I can and that I am. And he can explain how they affect you, my listeners, and how they affect you in your everyday life on the internet. So, anyway, we're going to talk a little bit about, we're going to talk my last little bit about wrestling, and then we're going to kind of move on a little bit into some mixed martial arts, some merchandise stuff, a lot of cool merchandise, some stuff that I've got here really kind of cool, some comics and a couple other things. So, last little bit about wrestling. This is something that when I've worked in independent shows, it comes up, you know, because when you're with wrestlers, you hang out with wrestlers, they talk wrestling. And the concept of the tweener, you know, the guy who's kind of sort of acts like a heel, but is portrayed as a baby face, the guy who's you know, kind of sort of acts like a bad guy and might have been a bad guy, but gets the cheers of the fans like he's the hero. You know, Stone Cold Steve Austin might not be the best example because he was clearly positioned as a hero, even though he gave the finger to his boss, beat up his boss, poured beer all over his boss, gave his boss the finger, and all this stuff, but all that time he was portrayed as a hero. He's not the best example because at the time Mr. McMahon is clearly portrayed as a bad guy because he wants to screw Stone Cold at every turn. Oh, screw you, Stone Cold, you're fired, you're not the person I want. I'm going to try and change you into the type of person I really want. So Stone Cold probably isn't the best example, but the New World Order, the original New World Order, Hall and Nash, the Outsiders, are probably the best example. They're clearly portrayed as bad guys. They're heels. They're out there to destroy WCW. But they're out there, hey, it's survey time. Cheer for me. You know, Kevin Nash, cheer for me. Not necessarily going out there and saying cheer for me, but when you got Scott Hall, hey, it's survey time, everyone. Hey, yo. You're clearly pandering for fan acceptance. But you're being portrayed as a bad guy. You're here to take over this WCW organization, the World Championship Wrestling. You're taking over. You know, you beat up Eric Bischoff, an announcer. You know, so you're the bad guys, but yet at the same time, you're doing actions that are going to get cheered. The surveys, you know, all the stuff, too sweet. So, you know, Sting was kind of portrayed as a tweener for a little bit. You know, no one kind of really knew what to make of him. You know, he ran off the New World Order. He kind of ran off some other people, but at one point he joined the New World Order. He joined the Wolfpack. And the Wolfpack was maybe not necessarily designed to take over World Championship Wrestling, but Sting is Sting. And Sting is going to get the cheers of the crowd. You know, so my wrestling friends will say, there's no such thing as a tweener. No such creature. You're either a bad guy or a good guy. There's no such thing as an in-between. No such thing as a tweener. I kind of dispute that. Again, same example. New World Order, Scott Hall, Kevin Nash. Nothing against either guy personally. Met Nash a couple of times, once or twice. No problem. Real nice guy. But it's very clear that as a member of the New World Order, as a member of the Outsiders, he's clearly cast as a villain, but he's trying to get the cheers of the audience. So this is something that I'm hoping I'll get a lot of feedback in my mail about. Podcast at sfpinchicago.com. Are there tweeners? Are there true tweeners and workers, wrestlers? Shoot me an email. If you don't want me to know your worker name, you know, shoot me something under your real name. Some guys I know both your real name and your worker name. If you put something in there that says, please don't tell people my worker name, then I won't mention it. You know, let me know, especially if I know your worker name, if I know who you are. You put in there, hey, please don't, send my worker name on a podcast. I don't want that known. But let me know, do you think there's tweeners in wrestling? I think there are. Like I say, Stone Cold might not be the best example. Sting might not be the best example. He's a better example. But the New World Order is absolutely a prime example of a tweener. If ever I saw one, I don't have the same experience that some of the guys in the ring might have, but when you sit here watching tapes and DVDs all day long, you kind of get an impression for what people are looking to do. So shoot me an email, let me know your thoughts. So, in the wonderful world of comics, if you're a comic collector, now we're getting into the fun shit. If you were a teenager, especially a teenage girl, in the 80s, I believe, probably the 80s, I don't remember the exact year it came out, but Jem and the Holograms. Now, I'm not getting into the history of the cartoon. Needless to say, it was licensed property, much like G.I. Joe, much like He-Man, Masters of the Universe, all this stuff, licensed properties. Much like a lot of other things from the 80s, it's making a comeback. It's making a comeback in comics. There was talk of a live-action movie of Jem and the Holograms. I don't know anything about that. Sorry, girls that are interested. Sorry, I don't know. I haven't looked into that. But I do know that IDW Publishing is making a Jem and the Holograms comic. IDW is the same place that did a very successful revamp of G.I. Joe. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, they did a revamp of He-Man, Masters of the Universe. So this is interesting only in a sense of IDW. Also, matter of fact, I know this actually. IDW also did an Angel and Buffy the Vampire Slayer series. So IDW is becoming very, very successful for making reboots, revamps of licensed property. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happened. Jem and the Holograms has had new life. Their DVDs, they've had a DVD box set of the cartoon. Basically, if you're interested, the cartoon is about a girl and her friends who are in a rock band. They are looking for something to get them to the next level. The girl discovers that her late father had left her a computer which is capable of creating lifelike, sophisticated holograms, and she uses it to make herself over into her version of the ultimate rock star, and as such she gets over as this hologram version of herself that she calls Jem. And they manage to it's kind of, if you've ever seen the Marvel Comics Dazzler, where Dazzler makes all these light shows because she's a mutant and has a mutant ability to make light shows. It's kind of similar to that, where it's kind of implied that even though Jem could have made it on her voice, what really put them over the top is the stage show with all these gimmicks, and of course the whole gimmick is just a hologram and not a real thing. It's something that you don't really want to spend a lot of time trying to think about the logic of it. Just enjoy the cartoon for the storyline. And the music. The music is not bad. You can find all the songs and stuff. They had professional singers doing all the stuff. It's not bad. But what's really interesting is, again, IDW Publishing has managed to take several licensed properties and make very successful series out of them. So I'm actually very interested as a comic fanboy to see what they do with Jem and the Holograms, because Jem has never had a comic done of them. I know that Buffy the Vampire Slayer never did before IDW either, and they had a very successful comic, and I believe that some of these were actually kind of approved as canon by Buffy creator Joss Whedon. So that actually is kind of interesting to see. I'm very interested in seeing what happens with Jem in a comic, and Gem as a live-action film. I'd love to see what they do with Gem as a live-action film, just because the advances in special effects and what can be done, because there's a lot of stuff in that series for a 1980 series that you can actually do live action and not have to do a lot in terms of like it'd be a lot of special effects, but I mean it could be very good. All this stuff could realistically be done through computers and special effects. So it's gonna be kind of cool. I'd be interested in seeing it. I spoke earlier about going to see WWE pay-per-views or Ultimate Fighting pay-per-views in a bar, going to your local bar, your local sports bar, whatever, and seeing it. And one thing that's kind of ate at me for a little while, when I moved to my current location, I went to a local sports bar and I said, hey, you ever thought about showing WWE or UFC or anything like that? You show a lot of basketball and football. You ever thought about showing the pay-per-views? And I was told, oh, no, we'd never show that type of thing. Yeah, never show it. I said, well, why wouldn't you show it? I said, well, it's not our kind of crowd. And I didn't really get an explanation of what that meant. Not our kind of crowd. You mean people that are passionate about their sport, that's not your kind of crowd? People that are willing to buy a lot of food and drink while they're watching the strap pay-per-view, that's not your kind of crowd? Because I know if I was a restaurant owner or a bar owner, I would hate it. I would hate it if someone came into my bar and said, I want to spend a lot of money while I watch this 3-hour show. I say, man, you're not my crowd. I don't want you to spend money here. Why is you people come into my bar and insist on spending money? What's wrong with you? It's all sport. UFC is sanctioned by the Nevada State Athletic Commission. If your thing is WWE is not a sport, okay, fine, whatever. Still show UFC. Ultimate Fighting is a sport. It's sanctioned. It's a sport. When you're sanctioned by the Nevada State Athletic Commission, you're pretty much good to go anywhere else. So I never quite understood when someone says, oh, no, that's not our kind of crowd. What does that really mean? Does that mean you had a bad experience? Does that mean you're biased? Does that mean, I have no idea what the fuck this is? It's not my crowd because I'm not personally, I hate wrestling, so, I would never show a wrestling show in my bar because it's not my kind of crowd. So does that mean that you don't like wrestling? If you don't want to show UFC, oh, I don't like UFC. It's barbaric. It's cockfighting, so it's not my kind of crowd. Is that what it means? I've never been able to actually determine what it's not our kind of crowd means. So if someone can tell me what that means, if you're a bar owner somewhere, and you're listening to this, email me, podcast at SFP INC Chicago, and tell me what exactly does it mean when it's not our kind of crowd. That's like saying, well, we're not wrestling, we're sports entertainment. Can someone please, crack me up in a dictionary and tell me what the difference is between a professional wrestling and sports entertainment? Because I don't know the difference. I don't know what sports entertainment is. I really don't know. Not a clue. Watching tapes for years and years, never quite figured out what the fuck sports entertainment is. Someone tell me. Sports entertainment, what is that, mud wrestling? Not sure what that is. So, again, podcast at sfpinc.chicago.com. If you can tell me what the difference is between sports entertainment and professional wrestling, articulate it for me. Hey, I'll put on here, hey, Joe of, Rochester, New York said, here's what sports entertainment is. Hey, I don't know. Tell me. Doesn't matter. Tell me where you come from. Tell me your name and where you come from. Send me an email. Tell me what sports entertainment is. Any other comments you have about any other topic I cover on this. Merchandise. Hey, if you want some merchandise that I'm going to talk about, shoot me a line. I'll give you an email for that too. But if you tell me that you discovered this merchandise from my podcast, get you a special little discount on stuff, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, because we're getting down to the merchandise front where we're going to talk a little bit about merchandise. Strikeforce, the mixed martial arts promotion Strikeforce. As many of you know, or maybe not, Strikeforce was absorbed not terribly long ago into the Ultimate Fighting Championship. Now, they don't have a lot of DVDs. King of the Cage got a lot of DVDs. Pride Fighters got a lot of DVDs. Pride's got some VHS. I think King of the Cage has some VHS. But Strikeforce really doesn't have a whole heck of a lot out there. And, something else is that the Ultimate Fighting Championship, the UFC as a whole, they don't really push their DVDs a whole lot. Now, the UFC makes a crap ton of money on their pay-per-views, because you look at the crowd, they don't have to really tape off sections of the crowd like WWE does, or Total Nonstop Action. They don't need to be taping up stuff. They have a crowd that's there. They have a rabid crowd. These people are paying money. They're making money on their pay-per-views. There's no doubt they're making money on these things. Don't ask me buy rates. I don't know. Not a clue. You can go online. There's probably 10 million people that regurgitate stuff from the Torch, the Wrestling Observer, anything else that'll be more than happy to enlighten you with now to what the buy rate is. I don't know. I don't care. I'm not tracking their buy rates. It's not something that interests me. I'm not a statistician. I don't care. I can tell you that they make a crap ton of money on this, so they really don't need to shill their DVDs as much. Because they're making less money, when you get right down to it, what makes them more money and what costs more? And when you're talking about pay-per-view, the pay-per-view costs a lot more. So that's going to be what the lion's share of revenue. They really want to push buying that pay-per-view, because you have to talk about the cost of facility, the fighters, fighter bonuses, all these people, the cut man, referees, all these people, all these salaries. There's a lot of money that goes into this. So they need to make up that money on that live gate. And then, secondary to the live gate is pay-per-view. So they're going to push the pay-per-view as much as they can. The DVDs are a secondary source. It's great when you're independent wrestling. This is the big thing. Indie wrestling, no one cares about DVDs. No, they do care about DVDs. You just don't sell them. You've got to push out your DVDs if you want to make money. It's a great way of saying, here's what happened, especially in pro wrestling where it's kind of storyline driven. The mixed martial arts industry isn't as much storyline driven. In some cases it is. If you have long-running feuds between two fighters, or if you have a certain fighter with a certain history, I would say, for example, Ronda Rousey or George St. Pierre. George St. Pierre is a perfect example of someone who can sit there and push a DVD about him, because he's not only had some famous rivalries, Matt Serra, Matt Hughes, he's had so many famous rivalries in the Octagon, because he's been a very dominant champion. When he was champion, he was very, very dominant. But, obviously, that would be something where you can say, hey, let's push the DVDs at him, but the live gate, the live crowd, and then pay-per-view are going to be the main focus. And this is something that again, they don't need to shill the DVDs as much. And WWE does not shill their DVDs as much. Total Nonstop Action, TNA, they don't shill their DVDs a whole lot. The difference between all those companies and the Ultimate Fighting Championship, aside from one being wrestling and the other not, is that the UFC makes money on their pay-per-views. WWE, I don't think, is making money. If they're making money, they're not making as much. I'm not seeing the same rabid fans I'm not seeing the same filled arenas. You're still seeing arenas with sections taped off and stuff. So if WWE felt that UFC was competition to them, because we know that they're a soap opera and their athleticism and their drama and their comedy and their laundry and everything, they're Disney and they put smiles on people's faces. No group is competition to them at all. I mean, really, no one could ever be competition. But I mean, if you really wanted to look broad, I suppose any form of entertainment could be competition. So, if you think it's entertaining to clean your toenails, hey, that guy cleaning his toenails in Mississippi somewhere, that's competition to WWE because that's entertainment still. If you're the type of guy that likes to watch someone, clean his toenails, on a YouTube video, hey, that's competition because that's entertainment. We're competing for those eyeballs. Of course, most people recognize it for the bullshit that it is. But again, if WWE would stop engaging in the practice of watering down some of their best concepts like tables, ladders, and chairs, quit watering down the concept by forcing yourself to have a pay-per-view once a year with that concept, where every match has to be a tables, ladder, chair, to water down a great concept. If you use that concept sparingly, you might get more money from it when you do have matches that are that are tables, ladder, and chairs. Hell in a Cell is the same thing. Oh, well, it's July. It's Hell in a Cell. We've got to find out a way to make sure these matches fit into the gimmick of the Hell in a Cell. How are we going to do this? You do it by not watering down the concept. You quit having themed pay-per-views. Quit trying to fit everything into tables, ladders, and chairs or Hell in a Cell, because you're watering down the gimmick by having it once a year and trying to find matches that'll fit this gimmick. Have these matches, when it's a logical progression in the storyline. And again, that it's still a UFC thing when I say the UFC manages to make money on pay-per-view by having entertaining matchups, by having matches that they know people are going to buy into, by hyping the backstory of these bouts, whether the fighters hate each other or they don't. The Tito Ortiz-Ken Shamrock feud was a huge seller on pay-per-view because people felt, oh, Tito, he disrespected Ken, he disrespected Ken's fighters. Oh, is anyone going to dethrone George St. Pierre? I'm going to pay to see Brock Lesnar lose because I hate pro wrestling and I can't wait to see Brock Lesnar get his ass handed to him. Oh, I know Shane Carwin is undefeated, so he's going to go and kick, so-and-so's ass and still remain undefeated. UFC knows how to promote their fights and get people interested in buying them on pay-per-view, and it would be really, really nice if WWE would learn that same lesson, but they really seem to be trapped in that bubble of we know best what we do, and we're stuck in the same mentality because it's always worked. And that might bite them in the ass because there's talk going around saying, oh, Vince McMahon can't be the owner of the company and be the main creative force and still be the same, business leader as well. But the UFC managed to do quite well with, having someone else who does the matches and creating matches that people are interested in buying them, and they don't need to shell out as much in their DVDs. It makes the DVDs kind of scarce because they put them out, but they don't really talk about it that much because they're making money on the pay-per-view. Could they make more? Of course they could. But I mean, it's a secondary thing. If they didn't want to make money with the DVDs, they wouldn't put them out to begin with. They want to make the money, but it's not as big an issue as buying a pay-per-view. And honestly, the money is coming with the pay-per-view. That's where the big dollars are. That's where their focus is going to be. on the concept of the Ultimate Fighting Championship, we've got a great DVD set available. The UFC Ultimate 100. It's the 100 countdown of the 100 greatest fights. It's an 8-disc set. It's got, to kind of make this set even sweeter, we've got a promo poster for UFC Undisputed 3. It's a promo poster for the video game. I don't know, how many promo posters are out there, but hey, if you want the promo poster for the game, we're going to throw that in with the set. It's pretty cool. It's going to be pretty limited edition. I'll throw it out there. If you're interested in that, drop me a line. Orders, like special orders at sfpinchicago.com. I'm not going to talk about pricing on the air, but what I will say is that everything I talk about in my podcast, if I'm talking about merchandise, and you mentioned specifically that you heard me talking about a certain item on the show, I will give you a discount. If it's a single disc type thing or a single VHS, hey, I might give you free shipping. If it's a set, I might cut off a little bit and give you free shipping. I'm not sure. It depends really on the cost of the item to begin with. A more expensive item, I'm probably more willing to go and chop more money off the top than I would something that's a little less expensive. But you never know. So make sure that you drop me a line at orders at sfpinchicago.com. In terms of merchandise that is not mine, but it's something you should check out, is a book. For those of you that say, oh, I don't read books anymore, I got them on Kindle. Hey, no problem. We got it for you on Kindle. Check out K.D. Cormican. That's K.D. like K.D. Lang, not like Katie Heigl. And her book, Whatever Makes You Blind. It's her first book. She is working on a second. I am working on getting an interview with K.D. For her second book. It's got some mixed martial arts stuff in there, but she is not at a point yet where she really wants to come on and come into the studios here at 316 Gimmick Street. If you'll allow me to kind of take a little Stone Cold Steve Austin rip-off. Hey, Stone Cold, if you're listening, sorry for ripping off your gimmick, man. I apologize. It's just a joke, no harm, no foul. But check out her book on Amazon. It's available on Kindle. It's available on paperback. You can get it on Amazon. It's called Whatever Makes You Blind. You can look up K.D. Cormican, Cormican. Again, it's her first book. You'd be supporting someone who's real close, family member, member of the Shadow Fire Promotions family. So it's really important that if you're listening to this, you check it out. She's working on a second book, but, we're all about supporting independence, supporting independent wrestling, supporting independent mixed martial arts, supporting independent authors, independent musicians, all that. So she's a family member. It would really, really mean a lot to her if you check it out. It would mean a lot to me if you check it out. I already mentioned my old buddy Nicholas Wautier and his company, Wautier Entertainment. Nick, if you're in Green Bay, Wisconsin, Nick is your go-to guy for ring announcing, DJ, pretty much anything you need. He does web design. He does podcast. He does all sorts of things. He is photography, all sorts of things. He's your go-to tech guy. I've known Nick for... Nick, you can help me out. What is this? We've known each other for, about a dozen years or so? I met Nick when I was working with a wrestling company out in Green Bay, Wisconsin. That's Green Bay, Wisconsin, home of Mr. Kennedy, Mr. Anderson, depending on how you knew him. I knew him as Kamikaze Ken back in the day. In any case, I've known Nick for about a dozen years or more. Really, really super intelligent dude, and I'd really appreciate, another guy who I'd really appreciate if you check him out and see maybe there's something there that Nick can help you out with. And certainly he's got some technology podcast, and he can probably help you out with some of the more technical stuff that I've discussed in this podcast. And he's a guy who's helping me out in terms of getting this podcast. He helped me out just to get the podcast on the page to begin with. He's going to help me get into iTunes, and he's helping with a whole bunch of other technical aspects. He's done some stuff on the web for me, my website. So yeah, Nick is a real good friend. I'd really appreciate it if you'd check out some of his stuff. Another good buddy of mine, Daniel Puder. Daniel Puder is the undefeated mixed martial arts fighter. You might remember him from WWE or Ohio Valley. He competed, he was the first $1 million Tough Enough winner. He's got a new charity. It's called My Life, My Power. Dan's a real good friend of mine. Met him, real great guy, real class act, super dude. And Dan and I are working to try and get some shows in the area locally for veterans, for local veterans hospitals, local, military bases, that kind of thing. Morale, welfare, recreation, do some stuff for the veterans, kind of give back, where Dan and I kind of use our mutual connections in the wrestling business to put on a wrestling show where we put, some of that money towards, the military, the morale, welfare, recreation, the Veterans Administration, all that stuff. So if you are interested, if you say, hey, I got a connection, I know someone at VA or Morale, Welfare, and Recreation, I know someone at my base, drop me a line, podcast at sfpinchicago.com, podcast at sfpinchicago.com. Let me know. Give me your name, where you're located at, the name of the person, as much information as you can. And give me your information, and we'll talk, and I'll talk with Dan, and we'll kind of hook up all together, and we'll see what can be done. But this is a really important thing to Dan. It's a really important thing to me, because I'm military myself, so it's a really important thing what Dan is trying to do, and this is how Dan kind of got hooked up with me. And I think Dan's got a really, really cool idea, and I'd like to see this happen. So, if you're listening and you're from a different area, but someone at the local VA or whatever, drop me a line with your info, the local VA, the local military base, all that stuff, and we can talk about some stuff there. On the topic of fighting and wrestling, mixed martial arts or wrestling, either or, your body goes through an awful lot. Even if you're not, even if you're just an athlete, but you don't compete in fighting or boxing or wrestling or anything like that, your body can get pretty messed up. I know mine got pretty messed up, sleeping in my car over the years, coming to and from independent events. My neck and back got pretty screwed up. This is something a little different because, this is sort of not someone who's really, a member of the family or anything, but this is sort of my own public service announcement, if you will, because I don't get a dime from it. But I think that, if you're one of those guys, if you're tired from the ring or tired from the cage, you want to kind of check out what's going on. You kind of, got years of wear and tear in your body, and you want to kind of see if you can get some relief. I would recommend going to a chiropractor. The place I go to is a place called Chiro One. It's chiro1.net. They're all over the Midwest. I don't know if they're over on the West Coast. I don't have necessarily a map or anything like that, but you can check them out. Like I say, chiro1.net. I know they're all over the place, at least in the Midwest. And the place I go to is Chiro One at the Loop. I see Dr. Ed Gurovich, and this Dr. Ed has been really instrumental in helping me. He's probably extended my own athletic career as a runner for about another 10 years or so. because I was probably set to retire, saying, hey, you know what, my body's given out. Too many years of running on cement. My knees hurt, my back hurts, my neck hurts. And then he was really kind of instrumental. He listened, and he said, hey, you know, I can help you out. Let me help you out, and, you know, you don't have to give up the things that you want to do. If you're a wrestler or a fighter or a boxer or, you know, doing something physical like that would affect your neck and back, it's probably not the best thing for you to continue to do that. But on the other hand, it could probably extend your career too by getting a chiropractic adjustment. You know, like anything else, though, you have to kind of work with it and carry on with it. But you know, check out Chiro One if you're in the downtown Chicago area. Check out Dr. Edward Gurevich, Gurevich. He knows I'm doing this. I don't really have any official support from them because I can't really. You know, everything goes through their corporate office, so I'm doing this on kind of an unofficial thing just because I think it's really important that the wrestlers and the fighters that I work with be able to live a life without pain and be able to feel better again. And I know that when I went through this stuff, you know, I had neck and back pain from my time in the military and again, going through cars, sleeping in cars and couch surfing and all this other stuff. Sometimes taking bumps when I got, you know, kind of inadvertently involved in a match. You know, had some wrestlers that might not have been so happy about some of the stuff that I sold. I distinctly remember once where I got kind of thrown around because some wrestler was upset I didn't have any of his merchandise. And I suppose the wrong answer was, well, if you give me some merchandise to sell, I'd be glad to sell it. But he didn't take too kindly to that answer. Smacked me around a little bit. Anyhow, I bear that particular wrestler no malice either, but, you know, it happens sometimes. But, yeah, check out Chiro One. If you're in the downtown Chicago, Dr. Edward Gurevich, Dr. Ed, Gurevich, Chiro One of the Loop 2. You know, I didn't have to give up running. I didn't have to give up anything athletically to do this, and it really truly did make me feel better physically. I think it's improved my health a lot, so that's really cool from my perspective, and it's something I want to share with all my listeners because, you know, you don't have to be a mixed martial arts fighter or a pro wrestler or any of that stuff to be or to live, you know, pain-free or anything like that. So I think that you know, it's really, really important to me, and again, it's something I'd like to talk about to my listeners. In terms of some other cool merchandise, we're going to go a little old school. We're going to go. Actually, we'll do a kind of combination of both. You know, I talked earlier about the UFC, the Ultimate Fighting Championship Ultimate 100. We talked about the promo post with that. I've got Hitman Hart Wrestling with Shadows. I've got some VHS of that, the original Canadian version. It's got a little booklet with it. Very, very cool. Very rare. You got those things straight from Canada. I picked them up from Canada. I did a couple of tours of Canada, and I knew a couple of Canadians that were able to hook me up with this. It's pretty rare. A lot of the ones that you got in the U.S. were a slightly edited version without the booklet, the Trimark Entertainment ones. So this is different. I don't even know. I know that at the time when you ordered from Canada, it was like a clean version and an explicit version. I don't know if the ones that were released in the U.S. were the clean versions, but I know they're definitely two different versions. So I have the Canadian version. I think I might have laying around somewhere the U.S. version, but I try to only get the Canadian version because that's the one that you know, has much more value with the booklet and the different edit and everything like that. So I got that on VHS. I also have the DVD, the 10th anniversary version. That comes, it's a 2 DVD set. It's the Hitman Hart movie. There's a documentary feature after where the filmmaker Paul J. talks about the whole Montreal incident If you're not familiar with the story, go online to Wikipedia, look up Montreal Screwjob. I'm not going to go over it in this podcast because I've gone a pretty long time as it is. So check it out. We've got the DVD set. We've got also the 2-disc set also has Life and Death of Owen Hart. And again, to make that kind of a sweeter deal, we've got the official lobby posters that hung in the theaters. We've got one with the original Hitman Hart poster, and we got one with the 10th anniversary art. So they kind of match the DVD covers. The poster is very, very cool, and the posters are absolutely an exclusive to us. Where we got them from, you're not going to get them anywhere else. You're not going to find posters anywhere else except us. No one has bought them in bulk from us. So if you say, did this person buy a lot? Oh yeah, someone buys them in bulk. Well, no one bought them in bulk from us. I'll tell you that right now. So if you want the posters, we're the only people that's going to get it to you. So again, orders at sfpinc.chicago.com. And if you tell me that you listen to my podcast, learn about something from a podcast, knock a couple of bucks off the price for you. I might give you just free shipping. We'll see what happens depending on what the item is. Brian Pillman, if you were a fan of World Championship Wrestling in the mid to late 90s, you knew Brian Pillman as a member of the Hollywood Blondes. Then you knew him as the 90s, the early part going to the mid-90s into the late 90s. He was a member of the Four Horsemen. Then he became the Ticking Time Bomb in the WWF, the World Wrestling Federation at the time, until his untimely passing in October of 1997 at the very first Bad Blood pay-per-view. But a former developmental territory before NXT, the former developmental territory for the World Wrestling Federation was Cincinnati, Ohio's Heartland Wrestling Association. And since Brian was a native of Cincinnati, Heartland put on from the years 1998 to 2001 the Brian Pillman Memorial Showcase. And they put together a show. These are live shows. It was one of the extremely few shows of cooperation with what was then the World Wrestling Federation, World Championship Wrestling, and Extreme Championship Wrestling. ECW had some representatives there as well. And you'll probably, if you know your indie wrestling guys, you might recognize some names that would go on to be even bigger stars in World Wrestling Entertainment or the World Wrestling Federation. If you're looking for WWF guys wrestling WCW guys, they weren't that cooperative. They were just cooperative enough to appear on the same show. But you'll see a lot of top guys there. Real big deal. I have a 5 VHS. If you still have a VHS player, and if you're a wrestling fan, there's no reason why you shouldn't have a VHS, because there's a lot of cool stuff that isn't on DVD from WWF, from WCW, from ECW, so there's no excuse not to have a VHS player. It's a 5 VHS set. Drop me a line again if you want, or it's a very, very cool set. If you want to see the match listing, I'll just email you the match listing. I got that separate. Just to show you some of these really cool names that were competing. Again, orders at sfpinc.chicago.com. On the subject of Brian Pillman, we're going to talk about Brian's ex-tag team partner, Steve Austin. Now, Steve Austin has been said to be hands down the biggest merchandise seller ever in the history of WWE. I've got a lot of his stuff, a lot of cool stuff. Oh, I got so much cool stuff from Steve Austin. But I want to talk about the one package of things that I have of Stone Cold. I've got his first 3 tapes, Austin 3:16 Uncensored, 'cause Stone Cold's and 'cause Stone Cold said so. And now, with Austin 3:16, that was second to 'cause Stone Cold said so. Now, with Stone Cold said so, there were 3 different versions of this tape produced. There was the first print, which had the little embossed, the raised skull, different color eyes, but the raised skull, the raised lettering. There was a second edition where everything was flat, no raised skull or anything like that. And there was a Canadian version, which has the bloodied Stone Cold from WrestleMania 13 with his match against Bret Hart. So I'm offering a package deal for the collector who wants to get all 3 versions of 'cause Stone Cold said so. And if you pick up Austin 3:16, I'll really give you a sweet deal on that, because I believe, not 100% sure off the top of my head, but I should have enough to make, sets of that and be able to make a set so for every 'cause Stone Cold said so. I should have an Austin 3:16 to match. And, concluding our merchandise segment, we talked a little bit about comics, we talked about some other cool stuff, is 3 Faces of Foley. This was Mick's first VHS through WWE. I think it was his first really starring, thing. If you talk about the Superstar series and the Spotlight tapes and all that, this was Mick Foley's first one. Talks about all his characters: Dude Love, Cactus Jack, Mankind. It was before his A&E biography, Mick Foley, Madman Unmasked. But really, Mick has been, in terms of merchandise, Mick Foley, Cactus Jack, whatever you want to call him, has been underutilized. In any case, I do have a couple of copies of his A&E biography. I'm not sure if I do that or not. I think I got 1 or 2 that are factory sealed still. Not getting a deal on the factory sealed stuff, sorry. But if you buy 3 Faces of Foley and you say you heard it through the podcast, I'll definitely hook you up with that. That said, we probably have run now anywhere from 3 to 3.5 hours. It's been my longest podcast to date ever. I hope that my other podcasts don't end up this long. I'll do that, but it just ended up that this was just so much happened in the last 2 weeks between, November 10 on the Marine Corps birthday when I did my last podcast and the beginning of December here. So much happened, and it just all happened kind of back to back to back that I couldn't, every time I wanted to pick up my tape recorder and do a podcast, something else happened. I had to kind of put it away and kind of focus on this new development before I could record. I said a little while earlier that we had talked about some other passings. Jim Del Rey had just passed a few days ago. As I do this podcast today on the 8th of December, actor Ken Weatherwax, who played Pugsley on the Addams Family, the original show in the 60s, he passed today. And about a week ago, if memory serves, American Wrestling Association announcer, play-by-play announcer, Roger Kent, also passed away. Roger Kent was a big name in AWA in the 80s, the late 80s, before they ended up going kind of belly up. So if you look at a lot of AWA broadcasts, I think they still have some on ESPN. If you go to ESPN Classic, I think they still run them. I'm not sure. My cable system dropped them a while back, so I don't have that anymore. But Roger Kent was a big name in a lot of the late AWA broadcasts. You can hear his voice on stuff, and he just recently passed. I don't have information in front of me on how old he was. I know that Ken Weatherwax was in his late 50s, so much like Jim Del Rey, died very, very young. So certainly condolences go out to the family of all these people. I know it was posted on the Shadowfire Promotions Facebook page about Brad Badden of the Badden Twins. They worked for Jim Crockett Promotions. Not sure, why Brad Badden passed or how Brad Badden passed, but it's been a very morbid 2 or 3 weeks in terms of people passing in both the wrestling and the acting community. So hopefully the Christmas season does not include a lot more passings. I am hoping there's not any major developments in pro wrestling or mixed martial arts or anything else until early January, when we talk about Ronda Rousey and the Royal Rumble and what's going to happen to Brock Lesnar and what's going to happen to Roman Reigns and all these other guys. But we will see, we'll see what happens with all of them as we go into it. And hey, who knows, I might have to end up doing something else in between then. But in any case, it's been about 3 hours. If you're still with me, thank you very much. I understand it's a long one. It's been a long one for me too. I'm not used to doing something this long, but again, there's just been a whole lot of stuff going on, and without the benefit of a weekly newsletter or anything else, this is the outlet that we have for doing it, and there's just so much going on. I don't expect future editions to be quite as long, but there's been a lot going on. So again, thank you. Thank you for supporting us. If you're interested in being any sort of a sponsor or doing anything like that and having it be official, email me. It's podcast@sfpinchicago.com. If you're interested in buying anything or questions about any merchandise, or if I have some merchandise, it's orders@sfpinchicago.com. You can follow me on Twitter, sfpinchicago.com, twitter.com, sfpinchicago, facebook.com, sfpinchicago, my website, sfpinchicago.com. I think that pretty much covers it for my own personal plugs. So thank you very much for all you who have stayed with me, and I will talk to you all very soon. Thank you again.